Want to welcome everyone to the budget meeting of April 28th, 2026. And we're going to start off with, I'm Aaron Kubik, the City Manager and Budget Officer, and I'd like to start off with a roll call. And we'll start from, how about over here to my right? Councilor Nicholas, you want to start? Roll call, please. Please state your name and if you're a council member or budget committee member.
Indra Nicholas, City Councilor, Ward 1.
Nancy Lester.
Kathleen Crone, City Councilor, Ward 4.
Christina Schlegel, Budget Committee.
Victoria Marshall, Ward 2.
Terry Hopkins, lay member.
Joel King, City Councilor.
Tom Bradbeer, Budget Committee member.
Rick Riker, City Council.
Adriana Reinhardt, Budget Committee.
Eric Schlegel, City Council.
Kurt Needhammer, Budget Committee, layperson.
Seth Benham, City Councilor.
Bob Brosius, Budget Committee.
Rob Pell, Council.
Nick Stark, lay member.
Great. Thank you, everyone, for being here today. We're going to start the meeting and taking a look at the agenda. The first item on the agenda is Budget Officer to convene the Budget Committee and nominations for Budget Chair and Vice Chair. We'll start with me asking for nominations of Chair. Once the Chair is then elected, we will turn it over to the Chair. The Chair will then move forward for election of a Vice Chair. So with that, I'm going to ask to open the floor for nominations. If I can hear some nominations, I see Councilor Pell, nominations.
Nominate Tom Bradbeer for chair.
Do I hear any other nominations?
Thank you, Mr. Pell. I would like to decline the nomination.
Okay, any other nominations?
I nominate Terry Hopkins.
Okay. Do we have any other nominations for chair to present to the floor? All right, seeing none, I will close nominations. We have a nomination for Terry Hopkins to be chair. We will go into a vote. Terry Hopkins for chair. All in favor? Let's go down and go ahead and state if you're in favor or not.
Aye.
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 Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
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 Definitely yes.
Oh, aye.
Abstain.
Yes.
Aye.
Yes.
Yes.
Aye.
Well, congratulations, Terry. You're chair. You're going to come sit up with me. If we could just take 1 second, maybe Tom and Terry, if you guys can switch seats.
Well, it was nice seeing you guys. I don't know if I signed up for this.
This way, Terry, you can, as chair, you can corral the crew a little easier by having a better view. Yes.
Tom, are these your papers?
No.
Yes.
Okay, I'm going to open nominations for vice chair for the Budget Committee, please. Any nominations from the floor? Rob?
I know in years past, Tom has declined to be the chair, but he has agreed to be the vice chair, so I'll nominate him for vice chair.
Thank you. I accept that nomination.
Okay. Any other nominations for vice chair? Kathleen?
I nominate Nick Stark.
Okay. And Rick?
I'd like to nominate Adriana Reinhardt.
Any further nominations for vice chair? Guess I should have been keeping them. Roll call for vote, starting with Tom. Roll call for vote, starting with Tom. Okay, if I can, we'll take a roll call for votes for Tom Bradbeard to start. You want me to do it by raise of hands or go down the line?
We can go down the line or raise a hands, whatever you'd like to do, but we're going through the nominations. If Mr. Bradbeard does get a majority, then Mr. Bradbeard would be elected the vice chair.
Okay, by show of hands, all those in favor of Tom Bradbeard as vice chair, please. 2, 3. Okay, 4, excuse me. And, okay, thank you. And there are 16 of us, right? Okay. And if we can, with show of hands, vote for Nick Stark, please. C3. And if I can, with a show of hands, votes for Adriana Reinhardt, please. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 10. Mine only add up to 15. I have 5 for her.
So we don't have a majority. Vote. So we have a 7, 3, and did you say 5? All right. So that's not, we don't have a majority would be of our 16 that we have would be 9. So we need to do another vote again, go down the line and see if we get a majority.
Okay, if we can do that again, we will start back over. I have Tom Bradbeard nominated for vice chair. All in favor of Tom with a show of hands, please. 8, I'm at 8. Oh, perfect, okay. That gives us a majority. Tom, welcome to the team.
All right. So with 9 votes, Tom, you are vice chair.
I just hope you're here every meeting, Terry.
I'll be there. Okay, with that, we will go to Budget Committee ground rules. We have the yellow sheet in front of you. Just ask for motion to adopt. Okay, without going over those, if anybody has any questions, but I would open a motion to adopt the Budget Committee ground rules. Motion by Rick. Do we have a second? Okay, Christina. I have a motion to adopt Budget Committee ground rules made by Rick, second by Christina. Any discussion? Okay, moving on to a vote. If I can start at this end. Nick?
Yes.
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 Yes. Joel?
Yes.
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 Okay.
Yes.
Motion passes unanimously. Next up, we are going to move on to Agenda Item 3, delivery of the budget message, and I think we've all received our budget documents.
Yes. Good evening, Budget Committee members, colleagues. I'm pleased to present the proposed fiscal year budget for 2027, our annual roadmap for strengthening Grants Pass and planning responsibly for the future. This year's budget continues our focus on public safety, quality of life services, and the infrastructure that keeps our community moving while maintaining our commitment to careful, transparent financial management. As always, the budget is more than a spreadsheet. It's the city's operating and capital plan the document that translates council policy and community priorities into real action. It also serves as our best answer to the age-old question, where exactly does all that money go? A question we're proud to answer clearly and openly every year through this budget process. Through this budget, we show how public dollars support the services, improvements, and planning that shape daily lives in Grants Pass. And while we can't promise the process will make anyone fall in love with the budget, we can promise a balanced, thoughtful, and forward-thinking plan for our community. The budget process and the budget message will consist of 5 primary items. First is we're going to go over an overview of the budget process and review budget documents and format. We'll discuss briefly level of service, move into budget parameters that are the makeup of what you're seeing in front of you. I'll address a general budget summary to give you a general idea of what the budget looks like, and then what we've done to prepare for the future. Overview of the budget process. Purpose of the local budget law. Local budget law requires cities and municipalities throughout the state of Oregon do something very similar to what we're doing today. It establishes standard procedures. It outlines programs and fiscal policies. It requires estimates of resources and expenditures. It encourages citizen involvement. As every one of our meetings, we have to provide an opportunity for the public to provide comment. It also controls expenditure of public funds. The purpose of the Budget Committee is to receive the budget message and the budget document, which we're doing today, provide members of the public an opportunity to ask questions about and comment on the budget document. Another item that's important for the Budget Committee is to approve the budget document, either as submitted or with changes. And a very important item, the last one here is listed, is to set the tax rate or amount needed to balance the budget. There are 4 main phases through this process. We're starting phase 1, which is to hear the proposed budget. That consists of 3 meetings that we have scheduled through the budget calendar. The first one is this evening. We've got another one scheduled for April 30th, where you'll hear Public Works, and May 5th, we'll go over Administration, Finance, and Urban Renewal Agency. We do have a packed meeting today where you're receiving the budget message. We're going to go over our LB projects, our lands and building projects, and then you're going to hear from police, fire rescue, and community development this evening. Phase 2 is after you've heard that, is to ultimately approve the budget. You're approving the budget to then move forward to council, where council adopts the budget, which is phase 3. And then phase 4 occurs if and when we need to make any changes after adoption of something that happens throughout the year. The city budget is really a financial plan containing estimates of revenues and expenditures for one fiscal year, and we do project out for a second year. It's based on our good faith estimates of revenues and expenditures, and it is the basis for appropriations, which creates the authority for the city government to spend money. So this is an example of what you'll see in the budget. This particular thing, I just want to go over the budget format. You can find this on page 171 of your book. You can follow along if you want to with some of these slides. But just going over how to read the budget document that you have when it comes to the numbers, because sometimes it's a little confusing. There's a few things that are on here. You're going to have your requirements, your resources, your expenditures that are listed. The first 2 columns are called actual fiscal year 24 and 25. These are the actual closed audited numbers that we have for those 2 years. That's the actual numbers as we either saw in revenues or expenditures. The next column is the budget for fiscal year 26. This is the proposed budget or the revised budget that has occurred throughout the year that we're working under right now, not that you're looking at today. This is what we're working under fiscal year 26. Then we've highlighted here in a deeper orange the proposed budget. This is what we're reviewing over these next 3 budget committee meetings, is the proposed budget. Now you will see a difference, and I just want to point out, because it's a question that comes up every so often, with the numbers, and why is the actual 24, 25 and the projected 26, there's a big jump there, what happened? Or they'll look at the 27 and they'll compare 24 and 25 and there's a big jump. Well, there's a reason for that. One is 24 and 25 are actual. 26, we're working off of projected good faith estimates of revenue and expenditures, and we're doing the same for 27. So there's a number of things throughout the year that we don't spend, and we ultimately get to bring back money to the city, whether it be general fund or enterprise fund dollars. So that's why there's a discrepancy there in the dollars. It's not a big jump. It's not like we're increasing the budget by that amount. It's one is actual, that's actually been spent, one is projected, and we usually underspend each year. There's also the projected 28. So this is our good faith estimate on what the next year looks at. Although we're not adopting 28, this is just an opportunity for us as staff and for you as budget committee to get a general idea of what kind of expenses we may be looking at in the next year. Service levels. How do we come up with service levels? Well, level of service is really defined by council. Council sets policy direction and defines level of service for all of our programs. How often do streets get swept? What type of park recreation services do we have? How many, what level of fire and police services do we have? That is set by city council. Council decisions on level of service guide what we do and to what extent. From a budget committee perspective, the budget committee's role is to ensure that the proposed budget allocates the appropriate resources to implement the level of service established by City Council. This includes reviewing revenue assumptions and expenditures and proposals to confirm that they align with the service levels the City Council has identified. From a level of service, to be productive in that dialogue, staffing levels are a tool, not a policy. They are how we deliver the service council has defined. Questions around staffing or service delivery should be focused on how the budget implements council's policy, not on defining what level of service we're having, not defining how many times the street sweeper is going to sweep. If there's a strong interest in changing the scope of a program or service, that input should be flagged for council to consider in a future policy discussion, not resolved through the budget process. Some of the things that drive the budget besides council policy is council's policy when it comes to adopting the strategic plan. We have a very robust and comprehensive strategic planning process, where council hears from the public, they hear from staff, they hear from our advisory committee members, they hear from themselves, and they determine what's important to this community. They identify those, they prioritize those through the strategic plan. Council adopts the strategic plan. Once that's adopted, staff has an opportunity to figure out how we're going to accomplish the strategic plan through identifying resources to make that happen, and we do that through developing a work plan. That work plan then guides the development of the budget. We'll see in the work plan that this requires this amount of time, or this requires this kind of hard dollar resources. And we identify those things and we build those into the budget, which you see in front of you today. You then appropriate those resources that are a direct reflection of the strategic plan, and then it gets adopted and staff ultimately has allocation of resources to make council's goals happen. We have 5 primary goals that are there. Those goals are supported by 6 specific outcomes, supported by 29 expected results and 89 initiatives. And those change, the initiatives and the expected results sometimes change throughout the year based on new things that come in. Another thing that affects the budget in front of you are budget parameters, our third section of today's discussion when it comes to the budget message. So parameters for the proposed budget and things that we're looking at that created the document that you're seeing today. We're incorporating council's strategic plan, the budget principles, and the capital plans. That is all represented in the number in what you see today. We're maintaining and improving current levels of service. Staff is holding the line where possible on expenditures. From a perspective of budget parameters, looking around at everything that we're doing, we're making good faith assumptions that there's going to be an expectation of inflation in different categories and in different ways, anywhere from 3 to 13%, depending on what expenditures we're talking about. We're looking for both short-term and long-term savings throughout the budget process. And when it comes to utility transfers, for instance, our enterprise funds, think of it as streets, water, sewer, parks, those kind of things. If we get to a point where all transfers of all extra resources go to capital project funds once we get our 25% operating contingency. So if we had a good year where we had a lot of savings and we've met our 25% reserve, the rest of that money, say in water or wastewater or streets, goes into capital project funds because those are always underfunded. We always need additional resources for capital project funding. And then ultimately we want to achieve a productive and efficient budget process. So this year, we went through earlier in the year, council recognizes this, and some budget committee members might also, we updated our financial policies. So this is just a general document that sort of summarizes those financial policies that we took a look at and council provided guidance on. These policies can be found on page 199 199 is where those pages can be found. And specifically, on page 122, if you turn to page 122, you would see this, updated financial policies. So this is a breakdown, and I wanted to be specific on this. We need to make sure that we have adequate fund balance policies. For instance, general fund. We start operating the general fund July 1. Although we don't get new revenues in until November when tax receipts start coming in. So we need to have a certain amount of savings associated with the general fund. And the same thing with many of our other funds where we're needing to hold a certain amount of minimum fund balance. These policies have been adopted and reviewed by City Council. Specifically, I want to talk about some of these. I want to say that of those, we're doing very well. The majority of our fund policies, we're meeting or exceeding our reserve funds, which is a positive because in years past, we were not exceeding or meeting some of those reserve fund policies. So we're in financially pretty good shape for the most part. Now, when it comes to general fund, the budget will represent that we're at 19.2%, although we have a 35% fund balance policy. Now, the policy addresses the minimum fund balance not as a budgetary measure this year, but will be monitored over the 25% as required by the annual comprehensive financial report. So we have a 25% goal, which is seen here in the general fund, and we usually measure that by the budget. But this year, with discussion with council, we are going to monitor that through the annual comprehensive financial report. The industrial and downtown loan fund is at $494,000, which is $6,000 below our policy fund. This fund is expected to receive more than $6,000 in interest over through and during fiscal year 28. So there will be no facade grants awarded until that fund balance reaches $550,000. So then we'll be able to meet our financial parameters. Tourism promotion is at 23.2%. The estimated ending fund balance is slightly below the 25%. The appropriations are typically underspent for this program, so we don't see this as a major red flag. The program is also currently being evaluated with potential legislative changes that have occurred at the state level when it comes to transient lodging tax dollars, other contractual challenges or grant distributions, and staffing allocations that may change. Policy decisions may be required during fiscal year 27 based on some of those actions that we're working through at the council level. Public Works Administration is at 37.2%, which is higher than our reserve policy. That's a positive. So how are we going to deal with that? The strategy will be to draw this program's balance down by charging internal customers less than expected for their expenditures. So they're going to get a discount in a way to draw that reserve down a little bit. So that's going to benefit all departments within the organization that work with Public Works. GIS, same thing. We've got a healthy fund balance in GIS, so we're going to charge a little less, drawing down that balance, providing services at a discounted rate until we get that reserve fund balance taken care of. Benefits Administration is at 198.4%. Now, the city will be utilizing these funds in the near future to address the city's wellness program with projects such as replacement of our automated external defibrillators, which we have one back there in the back that are very much needed and they are not cheap. Ergonomic equipment, safety equipment throughout the city operations. And then workers' comp. Workers' comp is above the reserve, which is another positive, by 110%. Part of this reason is the city has recently switched from self-insured plan, which the excess fund balance that we have now will be utilized every other year to offset some of the PERS rate increases. So that'll be how we draw down some of that, is to help offset those PERS rate increases over the next couple of years. The proposed budget is different than in the past, especially when it comes to FTE. So I wanted to highlight some of the FTE changes that are different from last year. One of those changes is council has provided some policy direction that they wanted to see an increase in some service levels, especially when it comes to police and fire. They did that by providing direction earlier this year for us to hire 6 additional firefighters and 6 additional FTE in police, totaling 12 additional FTE. Now, that will have an impact on, financially, on our reserves that we were talking about and that 25% that we're looking at. And that's that difference I was trying to explain earlier, where we're going to be coming in, if you look at the budget, at 18, a little over 18% from a reserve perspective. But we're actually going to be looking at our CAFR at the end of the year to make sure that we're at least above the 25%, because we likely will be due to the underspending. We underspend every year because we usually have openings in personnel, and those openings account for savings, which means we won't ultimately spend all the money that we're allocated to spend. So I want to put through this up here. This is just a chart with regards to police and fire, and this trend tells 2 basic stories. First, it tells a story that staff has been diligent and frugal. Even as we deliver council services and priorities, the general fund's unrestricted balance has gone from $13.4 million to $15.3 million over the period shown. That's a positive. We've grown. The second item that I wanted to highlight is that what we've got here is the budgeted expenditures increased from $24 million to $40 million, which means the fund balance to expenditures ratio fell from 55% to 38.16%, which means we have more dollars in the bank, but each dollar is covering more spending, so our cushion is thinner. Although we're increasing our money, we're also increasing our expenditure, so that is getting thinner. What do we do from a next step perspective? We need to maintain prudent reserves, and we need to slow expenditure growth. We need to enhance reoccurring revenues, or we need to do both. And we need to align budget choices with council's policy direction, because money is getting tighter when it comes to the general fund. Other additions from an FTE perspective, community service officer, some of the changes you'll see in the budget. Now, this is not an additional FTE. This is just a change in the way we're allocating the expense. We have a community service officer that was expensed in the downtown program. We've taken that expense out of downtown, so you'll see a credit to that, and we've put the expense into police, where the CSO belongs and is managed under. So that's the only change. No FTE change. We've just taken the expense out of downtown and we've placed the expense into police. We have an engineering supervisor where what we've done is this change replaces one engineering tech position with an engineering supervisor, resulting in a net annual increase of approximately $20,000. It's not a new FTE. We've, due to services that have been requested in the community and both internally and in discussions with council, there's a definite need for us to have an engineering supervisor instead of an engineering tech. So that's going to cost us an additional $20,000, but is not an increase in FTE. We do have one additional FTE increase in addition to the 12 public safety FTEs. And that is a facilities maintenance tech, which is focused on public safety, police and fire facilities. This maintenance tech adds a maintenance technician dedicated specifically to supporting all of our police and fire facilities, something that is definitely needed in order for us to maintain the expensive infrastructure that we have right now with our 3 fire stations and our police station. We have an reallocation of some resources when it comes to urban forester and trail coordinator that's mentioned in here. We're going away from really an urban forester and more towards a trail coordinator due to persistent challenges in filling this position of an urban forester and the opportunity that we've seen that really Public Works was using about a half-time urban forester, that they think they could do that through contractual services. We're able to utilize those hours that were once focused on Public Works and put them in where we're needing and seeing a new increase in services needed, which is a trail coordinator / urban forester, because of Dollar Mountain and the acreage that we have and the trails that we have in order to maintain that also, along with other things being a Tree City USA. This will result in additional ongoing general fund costs of approximately $54,000 because Public Works will no longer be utilizing 50% of that position. They'll be utilizing the services through contract work when they do certain projects. To dive down a little more with personnel assumptions, we talked about the 13 FTE that is projected, that's represented in this budget, which is the new number of FTE added. What is personnel assumptions and what cost are we looking at? Well, personnel assumptions are across the board the same, whether you're a water or wastewater utility worker or you're a senior planner. Personnel assumptions are basically the same. Your categories are health insurance, billed PERS, workers' comp, et cetera. They're all based on also individual bargaining unit agreements because we have about 6 bargaining units now within the organization, and each one has different things associated with annual COLAs or increases. Reasonable estimations are made for agreements not finalized. We have a number of agreements. Teamsters is under negotiations right now, so we're under negotiations with Teamsters. IAFF, our firefighters union, will begin negotiations in January of 27. Our Grants Pass Employee Association is under contract with a 3% increase starting January 1 of 2027. And then also we have non-bargaining, which has been a discussion point also at a council level. And we have numbers associated for increases to some form or fashion with all of those bargaining units and non-bargaining units. You will see some reductions in some of the personnel in some of those divisions and departments, and some of that reduction is associated with the non-bargaining. We've taken and reduced the non-bargaining requests from last year. We've added some for this year, but not to the extent that we did last year, but enough that council can have some flexibility if they choose to do something with non-bargaining. This is just sort of a graph that talks a little more about what I was explaining in the previous slide. For operating expenditures, the majority of our operating expenditures are personnel. Personnel is what costs the most when it comes to operating the city, and I've got some additional slides that will show that also. Citywide average personnel costs. It's not just about wages. Wages represent about 58% of the cost to the city for a person. We also have to add in PERS and insurance and other benefits, which equals the whole 100% cost for an FTE. So with this, these charts here are just trying to state what I mentioned earlier before, that we have to get and be really diligent about our general fund dollars because personnel is getting more expensive each year. And what the previous slides told you is that personnel is one of our largest costs associated with the city when it comes to operations. Our workers' comp premiums are going up. Our PERS costs are going up. Our PERS rates paid by the city of Grants Pass are going up. And all of these things are just showing that. And unfortunately, they're going up at a higher rate than what our revenues are coming in at, especially when it comes to property taxes. There's been discussion about savings and how our savings can fix some of our financial issues and some of the dollars that we bring back to the city, and that's just not the case. And part of that is that graph that I showed where, yes, we're getting additional, we're saving money, we're increasing our revenue, but our expenses are increasing at a greater cost. Historical savings is still at an imbalance. You have the historical general fund savings here. It is not creating a lot of extra money lying around for us. We have here the general fund budgeted revenues versus expenditures. There's a budgetary imbalance to provide the current service levels. We have here budgeted expenditures that are actually higher than budgeted revenues. And then general fund operating revenues versus operating expenditures, we're approximately breaking even in the general fund, even when you look at actual revenues versus actual expenditures. This year, it's estimated to be even a little bit more on the expenditures than the revenues. So money is getting tighter each year. Where in years past, we've had operating revenues that exceeded our expenditures. Couple of things as we move through the budget, you might look at some numbers and go, well, why does that look that way? And you may have forgotten why we jumped and had a dip in one thing and an increase in another. So just as a reminder, moving internal charges between departments out of contractual services to direct charges for better reporting is something that we did. What we did is through this, and I'll show it on the next slide, we had some changes to better allocate our expenditures so we could track them better. For instance, internet, telephone, general insurance, these are all citywide allocations versus department-specific allocations like equipment replacement and vehicle replacement. So from last year's perspective, we made some of those changes. For instance, we had everything in contractual and professional service, where now we broke it out where some of those things are contractual and professional, but also we've provided direct charges. So if you look at this year's budget and compared to actuals, you'll see a bump in some of those things, and that's what it is for. It's just that we are trying to better allocate for some of those internal charges so we can better track it. I want to briefly go over a budget summary to just give you a general idea of the budget and what we're looking at this year. Our total budget this year is $297 million, and enterprise fund represents 53% of that. General fund is 18%. That 53% is about $124 million, close to $124 million, at 53%. That sort of shows you from a standpoint of total budget, our enterprise funds are a large portion of the budget because we have a lot of infrastructure. We have horizontal infrastructure under the ground. We have plants that we need to operate. It costs a lot to run those to run those from a hardscape perspective. The total budget, which includes all internal services, funds, carryover balances, et cetera, is the $297 million. That's an increase from $240 million last year. That's a pretty big jump. Let me explain why. $52 million of that $57 million is the water treatment plant funding. Woohoo! Jason Kennedy and our water treatment crew and everything that we've done and the funding that we've gotten, thank you very much for your diligent work on that. Thank you, Council, for the policy decisions that you've made in order for us to get to where we are today. We are going to have a new water treatment plant. It does come at a cost. We've got it financially figured out, but it needs to show up in the budget sometime. It's showing up in the budget now. So that's why you've got such a large increase is $53 million, almost $53 million is water treatment plant. Personnel cost is an increase of $3 million, and of course, a large portion of that is the 12 FTE that came in to help with regards to level of service that was desired by council. Operating budget summaries can be found towards the beginning of the budget book on page 39. If you wanted to look at that, that'll give you a summary of all of the operating budgets. That's a go-to for me. I like looking at those pages in the beginning. It gives me a good idea and just a snapshot of things. The operating budget is a little different than that $297 million. Operating budget minuses a number of things. It doesn't have contingencies, it doesn't have ending fund balance, it doesn't have transfers, it doesn't have debt services. It really is truly what I'm saying when I say operating. How much does it cost really to operate the city? Take aside all the savings that we've got for the water treatment plan and this and that. What does it cost to operate on a daily and yearly basis? So you'll see here the actual for 24 was 47.2 million. The proposed this year is 61.9 million. Now, and I mentioned the majority of that is the additional FTE increase is represented there between the 58 and the 61. We've stayed relatively flat and level besides that increase in level of service. So where does the money come from an operating revenue perspective? So we have our general fund operations, police, fire, community development, parks and rec, and we have our enterprise funds, water, wastewater, sewer, transportation. The majority of our revenue comes in from fees and charges, that 46% right there. 36% is property taxes, which represents about $24 million. And some of these numbers can be seen on page 48 of your budget document. So this includes how much does it cost to operate the city on a regular basis throughout the board, not just general fund, but general fund and enterprise funds. Breaking it down, where does the money go? Again, this is a reoccurring theme. What's the biggest expense that we have within the city? It's personnel. So 60% is personnel services. And that 60% equals about $37 million. I love this graph because it sort of shows you the impact from an operation perspective, where the money goes, that kind of thing, of departments. You've got fire, police, community development, all of those are listed there, and the costs associated with those, which brings the operating dollars up to the $60+ million. Now, police is the largest. There's the recurring theme again. Why does it cost police? Why is police the largest item? Because they've got the most personnel. They've got approximately half of our FTE in the city. So it just takes what they call boots on the ground in order for us to keep our citizens safe from a police services perspective. So that's why they have the largest cost. When we're budgeting, we budget for full capacity, which generally means full employment, full potential materials and services needed in operating departments. We do turn back resources, which is a positive. We underspend when possible. We're very frugal with the dollars, and we're not always at full capacity. There's always an opening in some department or division. Our operating budget for fiscal year 27 is up $3.7 million. $2.96 million of that is due to the additional FTE, and $0.75 is due to certain utility and other expenditures. Again, that just highlights the FTEs that I've already mentioned today, the 13. We have 6 in police, 6 in fire, and 1 in facilities that are focused on police and fire. So property taxes. We have a permanent property tax rate of 4.1335 per thousand, which brings in approximately $17 million. We do have a public safety levy at $1.79. That brings in $8 million for a total of $24 million in projected revenue from property taxes. This year we're seeing and we're estimating a 4.14% increase in property taxes. Property taxes and increases in property taxes are made up by 2 things. One, an increase in existing property taxes, which are allowed by state law to happen. And then also, if we've had new construction come online, for instance, when the Hampton Inn came in, that was a big push for us. We got a lot of additional property taxes there. Or say when Home Depot came in, big jump in property taxes when big items like that come together. Well, we are estimating from new construction a 1.51% increase in property taxes also. So that's a positive. We are also in our public safety levy. It's a 5-year levy, and we'll be in our 3rd year for fiscal year '27. So likely in the next year, council will have discussions with staff with regards to our public safety levy and what we'll do in the future. And we've always said in some form or fashion that all property taxes go to public safety. It takes more than just the property taxes to fund police and fire. So it's relatively easy to say, we don't have a hard policy that's written somewhere that says property taxes go to public safety. But in general, all of property taxes go to fund public safety, and then we have other general fund dollars to help support that. The general fund has the only discretionary revenues in the entire city, shared by all general fund departments, including police, fire, community development, parks, general fund, capital transfers, and others. Now, when I say discretionary, it means that's a dollar that can go anywhere council prioritizes that dollar bill. Versus a utility enterprise like streets, stormwater, water, wastewater, that is not discretionary. If you look at your utility bill and it is collecting a water rate, that can only be spent in water. It cannot go anywhere else. That is put away in the bank for water. Same thing for streets and stormwater and wastewater, that kind of thing. So the total general fund discretionary revenue, discretionary after property taxes, the money that we have discretionary for council to allocate to other areas, is $7.4 million. So program expenditures is sort of another graph that sort of highlights something I showed you before. This could, the information here can be seen on page 34. Shows the police, fire, followed by community development are the larger cost programs. And when it comes to general fund, again, it comes to personnel. The majority of general fund expenses comes personnel, followed by contractual services, direct charges, etc. But the largest expense in general fund, for what you see, is boots on the ground. We have user fees. We do have a user fee. All utility rates are tied to a CPI index for annual changes. So each year, we raise those utility fees based on the CPI each year. When it comes to our enterprise funds, our water and our wastewater programs are the two larger expenditures, followed by streets and stormwater. Now, this shows a little different in the expenditure form when you break it down on where the money goes. The majority of the money goes to transfers, followed by personnel. Now, the transfers represent capital. Transfers dollars into capital to create and build things. So the largest cost when it comes to enterprise funds and what you see on your service fee bill each month goes to transfers, followed by personnel. So to conclude the budget message, just want to highlight a few things that we've done throughout the departments and divisions to prepare for the future. Actions in recent years to improve financial position, effective financial policies, efficient, fiscally sound, ending fund balance requirements for operating programs are better than they've ever been before from a standpoint of all of them the majority of them are at or exceeding their fund policies. We have established good investment policies. Our finance director has worked with the city council in order to make sure that we're reviewing those on a regular basis. We're a high-performing organization, which helps provide excellent services to our customers, both internally and externally, with the most cost savings possible. As mentioned, we're in the 3rd year of our 5-year public safety levy. That's going to be one of our challenges. How are we going to continue to fund public safety? Are we going to renew that with another levy? What's that levy look like? Some other challenges that we're looking at. permanent, sustainable, matching level resources to fund police, support, and fire rescue departments. We need to come up with, if we can, and continue to look at and explore ways to fund our public safety operations with sustainable resources. Services available from the county and the city that the city rely on to enhance community safety, like rural patrol, jail, district attorney, juvenile, that's something that may be a challenge in the future. Because the criminal justice system, for example, is not just police, it's not just fire, it's DA, it's jail, it's a number of things. And if one of those pieces is broken, the whole system is broken and it's not balanced. So we have to rely on our neighbors in order to make sure that we have a balanced program so we can run efficiently and effectively. We have population surges in Grants Pass, which creates an additional burden on my colleagues and our system. To just in a great extent, an easy way to look at it is each day, because we are the county hub, we have thousands of people coming inside the Grants Pass. We have visitors coming into Grants Pass. But to just look at it from one little point, look at Boatnick. That's just a huge amount of people coming into Grants Pass on a large scale. But the amount of wear and tear on our system, the amount it takes from a personnel perspective of overtime and scheduling for police and fire is incredible. The cost, the additional costs those services provide that we're not getting reimbursed for. So that's just a bigger aspect of looking at that, just like we are the hub, so we're getting a lot of visitors coming in and population growth, and some people are paying into those services they're receiving and some people aren't. Expanded quality and quantity needed to serve a growing city. We're growing. We're getting additional housing. We're needing to develop additional roads. We're needing to expand our services. Technology is changing, and we need to keep pace. Collaborating with newly established Josephine County Fire District to guarantee uninterrupted services, exploring new avenues to help alleviate EMS needs for the community, looking at emergency management services. A number of things are challenges ahead that we see that are not insurmountable, but things that we need to have on our radar so we know that we can take a look at and make sure that we're budgeting for and strategically planning for success. 2025 was another sluggish year for single-family residential construction when it comes to community development. Only 46 permits were issued for new single-family dwellings. That was one of the lowest years in the past decade. However, we did see some stronger townhome and multifamily residential permitting to counterbalance that weak family market. So we've seen less single-family, but more multifamily. 150 new units of multifamily were coming online in the next 8 to 10 months, with another 140 units coming up again. So severe written burden is down for the third straight year in a row, which is excellent. We've got the Owl Plaza and the Riverside Bandshell, which we're completing, which are new opportunities for recreational opportunities and to celebrate community spirit. We have Cape Man Pool and the renovation of Cape Man Pool. We've struggled with that over the past few years and what we're going to do with that. It continues to present a number of funding and operational challenges for us. Deciding how and when Beacon Hill Park it will develop. That's something that council's looking at, and that will be something that we're looking forward to in the next year, determining what we'll do with that park facility. Washington Midland redevelopment, that North Star project, how exciting. We had a community group meet and we had 65 plus people there. It was just, it was amazing. What a great turnout. People are jazzed about that. We have Development Code Task Force, which is entering its 5th month of meetings, which is getting some great feedback between community development, my colleagues, and some of the contractors and developers in the community. We're really forming good relations and getting good ideas on how we can make our development codes better. Future job and earning growth and expanding Grants Pass industrial base. Our Spalding, we have a grant that we got, some dollars that we got to help with Spalding. We need to look at how we can continue to increase those jobs and rely on strong public-private partnerships and a well-trained workforce. When it comes to public works, we have a number of infrastructure obligations ahead that are significant. We got our water treatment plant facility. We've got planned replacement needs for all of our utility. We have an aging infrastructure system, and it's underfunded in almost every category. Changing regulatory environment. We're always having additional regulatory items coming down, which is costing us more money, not less money. We don't get something from the federal government or state government saying, congratulations, you no longer have to monitor or test for this. That's pretty rare. It's usually, guess what? Now you have to measure this instead of from the 1,000th to the 1,000,000th parts. And it's going to cost you another $7,000 a year to do. So those things usually end up being more expensive. We have funding challenges associated with general fund, like City Hall maintenance and future replacement of City Hall, and Hillcrest Fire Station is a big one that we're addressing, and we're going to try to address in the near future. And declining transportation funding from the state, coming down from the state, and how are we going to deal with that? Administrative-wise, we need to try to manage healthcare costs as much as possible. We're seeing higher experience usage rates, which will increase potentially our health insurance costs. Future periodic costs, delayed contributions on infrastructure and equipment needs. When we delay those infrastructure needs, it usually ends up becoming a bigger cost in the long run, so we need to be as proactive as possible. Whether it be a council chambers or a road on the street, we need to try to be proactive as possible on that. As I mentioned, we have about 6 labor unions and negotiation with those organizations. We need to contract and wage negotiations in the coming year. We have a number of them. Wages need to be competitive to recruit and retain high-quality staff. And then we have PERS rates, which we can't do a lot about, but we know it's out there, and we're trying to budget appropriately and utilizing funds that we can in order to keep those costs down. In summary, fiscal year 27 proposed budget is balanced. The capital budget addresses major technical issues and council priorities, and we've worked to meet the challenges ahead as we try to maintain service levels. As we close this year's budget message in conclusion, I want to acknowledge the remarkable work of my colleagues as responsible stewards of public resources. I want to thank Mindy, Carl, is Carl here? No. Mindy, Carl, and Kendra for your support and help in putting this budget document you have in front of you. So a lot of the individuals on that last table had a key role in putting this document together. I also want to provide special thanks to JC, aka Hacksaw. I tell you, his leadership in coordinating this monumental task has been amazing, and I can't express my appreciation for JC on that. Our organization has a long history of frugal and responsible management, careful in our spending, disciplined in our priorities, and consistently underspending our authorization where appropriate. That stewardship has helped sustain our flexibility and resiliency, even as demands for city services continue to grow. Looking ahead, our task is to remain clear-eyed and proactive. The pressures we face, expenditure growth, revenue constraints, and increasing expectations for services are real. But they are also manageable when we approach them with the same thoughtful and collaboration that has carried us through to this point. This budget reflects council and community priorities, aligning our spending with our highest priorities, strengthening our revenue, and calibrating our level of service in ways that are both sustainable and reflective of community values and council goals. We will need to make disciplined choices now and in the future. We will need to stay focused on the balance between the community and what they expect and what reoccurring revenues we can support. But we will do that with optimism because the city has demonstrated time and time again that we can adapt, innovate, and deliver high-quality services even in challenging environments. I'm confident that by working together with council, staff, and the community, we can continue to build a stable financial foundation that supports council's strategic plan, protects essential services, and positions us for future opportunities that reflects a shared priority of the people that we serve. Thank you for your continued leadership and partnership and your commitment to a strong future for the city of Grants Pass. That concludes my budget message.
Thank you, Aaron, and thank you to members of staff who I know put in many hours making that happen. Aaron, is it okay if I go to committee for questions before moving on to the next budget item? Can we pause here?
Yeah, we can pause here. Next up will be Hacksaw. He'll come up and provide an update on our LB, which is part of this process.
Okay, day one on chair, I'm still going to call him JC. But
Okay.
before we get to JC, do we have questions on the budget message from members of the committee? I'm going to start with Rick.
Thank you, Aaron. Can you go back to the slide on industrial downtown reserve? That may be hard to find, or I can just ask the question. You said there's a deficiency of $6,000 for that reserve, for the fund to be,
Oh, I know what page you're looking at now. Let me go. Yes, yeah, the industrial loan fund.
right.
Okay, go ahead. What's your question?
So for clarity and just discussion on the $6,000, is it appropriate for the budget committee to weigh in on that $6,000 today, or just to hold off for the city council to discuss that in the future? Because you indicated with that deficiency, the fund would be frozen until 2027?
Yeah, it is gaining interest, and that's how we funded the industrial loan fund. Has not been highly utilized. It does get utilized. And the additional, years ago, there was a policy that we adopted that anything over the $50,000, when we get to about $550,000, we're going to start utilizing that additional $50,000 for some facade grants for the community. And that's been relatively successful, but it's drawn it down to just below the reserve policy. And so now we're needing to pause and not do any more of those programs until we build that back up again.
Okay, so if the council, again, wanted to relook at that, that would be in the future for the
Yeah, if
council.
council wanted to change something with regards to that program, we could have a discussion at a future workshop and discuss that program.
Okay, and last question, on the facilities maintenance tech, is that allocated on the line item by 50% on fire and 50% on police?
No, it's not. I think it's going to be billed according to usage. So we have the 3 fire stations and we have the police station. And we're going to have that 1 FTE that's going to be funded through the billing of the use of that individual in those facilities.
Okay, thank you. That clarifies it.
Go ahead, I'm sorry. Rob.
Aaron, thank you very much. A good presentation on a very complex subject. My question is on page 122 regarding the general fund ending fund balance. And I want to be sure I have an understanding of the relationship between the policy that calls for 25% and the reference to a 19.2% ending fund balance if full employment were achieved?
Yes.
Okay, so the full employment budget, as we used to talk about it at 25%, is really now at 19.2%.
Yeah, we have to, when it comes to a budget, we have to submit a balanced budget that has revenues and expenditures. And when you do that, you're budgeting that you're going to have full expenditures and full revenues. So if you have full revenues, full expenditures, we ultimately would be at that 19%. However, we discuss at a council level over workshops that the reality is there's going to be money that's going to be returned.
Always
so
has
if you
been.
look at the CAF, or if you look at the financial report, we're going to be more at 32 or 35 or something along that percent. And that we should judge that for the general fund, we should judge that reserve policy in the actual, not in the anticipated full expenditure.
It's possible that the city would get to full employment.
It is.
Certainly, there's always going to be a minimum amount of turnover, but certainly getting the new positions filled over the next year or so could create a situation where we're headed to a 19% ending fund balance. If that were the case, what adjustments would be made? Would there have to be reduction in budgeted funds at the end of the year?
So I think that would ultimately be, that would need to, we would be monitoring that, JC and others would be monitoring that. If we were going to get close to that, we'd be bringing that to council in advance of having a catastrophe of, oh, guess what? We've just blown our reserve, our reserve policy. We would be coming forward saying, hey, here's what we're looking at. Then we would have to have some policy choices that council would have to make.
And that would include service level reductions.
It could include revenue increases, expenditure decreases, a changing again of the reserve policy. There's a number of options that council could look at and consider.
Okay, just one last follow-up.
Sure.
Will this have an impact on the credit rating of the city?
We looked at that, and I'll have JC talk directly to them. I'll let him answer that one.
Yeah, so it is a piece, and we've gone over this with council too. It is a piece of the formula that is used to calculate your credit rating, but it's not 100% of the actual formula to calculate your credit rating. So based on the water revenue bonds that we just issued, our financial policies are strong, as noted by S&P Global that did our rating, and we got an A+.
And the bonds are out. They're 4.3%, is that coupon rate?
I believe the average is slightly lower than that. It's like 4.26.
Well, I hope everyone purchases lots of them and bring the interest back to Grants Pass.
Other questions from committee? Indra?
I can't find the page, but you put it up there. You said, don't be alarmed. This is actual. It goes up. It makes a jump because of the budgeted. It's always less than actual. So my question is, I think it was, I'm sorry, I can't find the slide. For 24 and 25, was the proposed budget, because that's not in there, for 24, was the proposed budget higher too, and it came in lower actually, and 25 also? Is that why you are assuming the 26 will be less?
Counselor, that is correct. The adopted 24 and 25 budget was higher than the actual 24 and 25 budget.
And you expect that again?
We do expect that again.
Do you regularly propose more, thinking it'll be less, or do you try to get more on what it actually is?
We try to do spot on with our expenditures and revenues, but like Mr. Bradbeer we were explaining there, is we have unforeseen things that account for savings, like openings, or us not doing a project that we budgeted for, or whenever we have and that it ultimately is a savings, so it's not a full expenditure. There's some, if you break it down a budget like materials and services or whatever, you'll get close to some of the materials and services. If we have a small budget, if you took like just a small budget and you're like, here's our materials and services, it's $25,000, and it represents 15 different line items from office supplies to contract service, those kind of things. You might get to a point where you're spot on. I've spent almost $25,000. But those are things that you can budget for, and you see. It's the things that are not totally controllable or not foreseen that accounts for those savings. Like, again, take personnel. There's so much that can happen there in personnel, and we know that people move and change, and so there's those savings. But we have to account in case we had an amazing perfect storm year where we had full capacity. Wow, that'd be great, but we have to make sure we have enough money to budget for that, and so that's why we have it has to be balanced. But we always have a savings. It's not necessarily always in personnel. It could be in materials and supplies and services and those kind of things. It could be that we got a discount on insurance rates, and so now we're only having to pay. We're saving $50,000 or something like that.
I'm assuming sometimes it costs more for things too, though.
Yes, it
does.
does.
So are you saying you're always under, or sometimes it's over? It just has been good lately.
No, and that's some of the juggling that the amazing professional staff does, is they'll sometimes see if they're doing a program and they're like, oh my gosh, we were expecting these defibrillators to come in at this amount, and they came in $25,000 over. How are we going to cover that? then we look at making sure we underspend, and maybe we don't do this expense this year. Well, maybe we'll have to get new carpet for City Hall next year because we have this new expense that we did. And so we balance some of those things when we have those overages, so we make sure we stay under budget.
Thank you. Next up, I had Joel.
You gave us a graph that showed the percentage of personnel costs as a percentage of total costs, and it was about 60%.
Yes.
Which, from my background, that's pretty healthy. How does that compare to other cities? Is only 60% of the total cost going to personnel seems like a pretty healthy organization.
Well, when you're saying healthy, are you saying healthy positive, or?
I'm saying that we're not overstaffed, and that it's a reasonable amount of staffing, at least cost-wise, because we're at 60%.
Yeah. So it's tough to sometimes compare other municipalities because we're a full-service city. Some cities might not have a police department. They might contract with the sheriff, and so that changes the dynamic totally.
Sure.
I can tell you that in the past, we've done independent performance auditing vision enhancement reports for every department within the organization. And each one of those has said that we're operating with less personnel than they would recommend. So I think that's keeping our personnel costs down. We are a very active and very efficient organization, but when I tell you, like police, and the chief can come up and mention, and both chiefs can come up and say, we're running the wheels off of our vehicles because we're just responding. We have lots of responses, lots of calls, but we're doing it with a number that provides for this opportunity for us to keep costs down.
So the other thing I saw was, at least I think I saw, was an increase in workman's comp.
Yes.
That we haven't seen in years past.
Well, we're projecting, there's been some increase in workers' comp, but we've seen an additional use in some of that workers' comp. So we're concerned about what that ratio might be in the future.
So my mind goes to, typically that comes from being stressed and overworked.
Yeah, that's one of the reasons.
Which inadequate staffing is what I read into that.
That's part of it. That could be part of it.
Okay.
But there's other things like, do we have proper training and opportunities for people to learn on how to lift a box? Do we have ergonomic appropriate tools for them to utilize? There's a lot that goes into that, and that's why we have a program that assesses those things.
It just seemed like it was at a deflection point from at least the time I've been on council.
Well, and that was one of the things that we did discuss at a council level when it came to the FTE that council identified of needing more. You heard from both chiefs that we were maxing out and we were getting tired, and you saw that in their eyes, and so that was one of the reasons, and that will ultimately hopefully provide a positive benefit for us.
So I'm just going to add a little bit to Councilor King's question. When he's looking at the 60%, that is just for our operating areas, so that does exclude the capital project areas. And so total for the city, that only makes up about $77 million of the proposed budget. Of that $77 million, we're looking at $46 million as personnel, which gets you to about that 60%. Now, it swings between fund and fund, but just keep in mind that the general fund, you have to have people to provide the service like police and fire. And so what you're looking at in that budget is almost $45 million is budget, and $31 million is personnel. And so you're at actually 70% of the entirety of the general fund is in personnel costs.
And in my experience, that's healthy.
Okay. If I can, other questions from the committee? Seeing none, JC, I'll ask you to come up and talk to us about the strategic plan, related capital projects.
Thank you, Chair.
Thank you.
Good evening, everybody. Just a little bit of housekeeping. This won't be relevant until next Tuesday, but you do have a blue piece of paper in front of you. So before today, we did find a mistake, and those pages are pages 308 and 309, and the change is actually on page 309 on the backside, and you can see we highlighted specifically what we did change. And so it doesn't change the total appropriations of the budget. It just corrects a line item that we had in there. The next thing I want to point out is we colored both of these books a little differently. Sorry for those who may be colorblind. But the general operating book is blue and the capital book is green. We're going to jump just to the green book for this presentation. Jason on Thursday is going to do his best of jumping back and forth and hopefully letting you know which book he's jumping back and forth to. But hopefully when you get there, it'll make a little bit more sense. So the first thing, going through the lands and building projects, we do a review of all lands and building projects, receive new funding of allocations of 100,000 or more, and any new LB capital projects where we don't have any new LB projects being proposed this year. And then we review the basic project descriptions and budget along with the funding source. So just as a general overview of the lands and building projects, most of these projects that are going to receive funding come from restricted resources. Some of them will get some unrestricted resources coming from interest earnings, and you'll see that in the project of resources come under the lands and building classification on the resources, which is the top portion, and I'll go over that in a little bit. Some of the previous contributions you will see that have come from the general fund, but really there's not that much coming from the general fund into the lands and buildings projects this year. There's only about 180,000. There's 65,000 being contributed into the police equipment replacement fund, 65,000 being contributed to the fire equipment replacement fund, and then another $50,000 from the general fund going to special events. Those potentially all will get to the fire equipment replacement, but the other two won't be mentioned because they're not over the $100,000. And again, on Thursday, Jason's going to go over water, wastewater, transportation, stormwater, and solid waste. And again, he'll do that on Thursday. And as a reminder, because I'm going to plug it now, the Capitol tour is 4:45, about an hour before the budget meeting on Thursday. So in your book, your green book or your capital book, pages 7 through 10 do kind of give you a description of how to read the budget. There are these red boxes around pictures of what to focus on. I've kind of condensed that down into the nuts and bolts of how to read the current year's recommendation, which is in the orange section. All of your resources are going to be in that top section. So another way of saying that is all of the revenues for that project are going to be in that top area. And on the left, you'll see the classification as far as where those revenues potentially came from. The bottom section is going to be your requirements or also your expenditures. And it's going to track and typically shows the transfers, expenditures for that project and the timing of when those came out. So without further ado, I'm going to go over the projects that are $100,000 or more, and we're going to review the basic project descriptions potentially. Now, Chair, I will kind of take a pause if you want to kind of read the room, and then you can tell me whether I should move forward or not. So the first one is going to be LB00. It's on page 117 of your book. So we are actually going to be moving $150,000 to the fire equipment replacement and $50,000 to the River Vista House demolition. We are doing quite well in our investments, and so we're going to say that over the next year we'll be earning $300,000 of interest. We also, as a place marker, put the non-dedicated, quote-unquote, our urban Urban Renewal Agency special payments. So this isn't necessarily saying that we're going to spend this money. This just gives the city the maximum flexibility to say that there are resources available to come in from the URA to do projects. And then the requirements of the proposal in fiscal year 27 in this project is $357,000 to initiate an IT equipment replacement fund.
We'll pause for questions. Tom?
Oh, yeah, my question is about the special payment in from the URA. Fairly substantial amount. And by putting it into lands and buildings, does that make it then available for projects that are even outside the URA?
No.
Then how do you track that in the lands and buildings fund?
So they are project specific that are for special URA needs. And we'll go through a couple of these when we get there. So the pool is going to receive URA money. So there's another project out there with North Star and the Midland and Washington lots that potentially would be getting URA money, but we don't have a project yet. And so again, this is just a holding place to allow for the city to accept those funds. And if you look on page 117, we allocated $6.2 million in fiscal year 26 adopted budget, but we didn't actually move it there. We move it to the actual applicable projects that are URA acceptable.
Oh, that was going to be my next question. All right, thank you.
Okay, any other questions from the committee? Thank you, JC. Looks like, oh, thanks, Rick.
So on page 117, it also shows transfers under requirements of $357,000.
That's a good question. Yeah, that is to initiate the IT equipment replacement fund. So we talked about at the council policy, we do have some funds that were built up that are unrestricted interest earnings. And we are noticing an uptick in IT requirements for equipment, which is your laptops, your computers, everything that goes in the police vehicles, the fire vehicles. And I think I have some quick numbers over here. The general fund saves about $161,000 of not having to replace the fiscal year 27 IT requirement by utilizing these funds in this way.
Okay, thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, thank you, JC. Carry on.
LB 6370, Dollar Mountain, page 127. So this is being proposed to get $100,000 of lodging tax. There is a restroom that is planned for Highland Loop parking lot, and that is why there's the allocation of the funds. And with that, I'll take any questions on this.
Questions on Dollar Mountain? Rick?
So at Tussing Park, we put in some restrooms that ended up being locked up because they were abused. And consequently, it was an expense to the city that never really saw proper usage. How do we, when we're looking at a restroom at Dollar Mountain, how do we look at that aspect?
I think that's a good question maybe for Josh to come up and answer.
Just for clarification, the Tussing Park restrooms are open. They were just closed for part of the whole time we were having an issue at Tussing, but they are active and open right now. For this location, we'd be choosing a restroom similar to what you see in other parks that are like mountain bike facilities, like over at Cathedral Hills. They're similar to the Lou in the sense that they're designed to take abuse, but also it's a different clientele up there than what we were seeing living at Tussing Park at the time. So it's really not as big of an issue. And then Highland Loop is already locked at night, so this restroom would also get locked at night when they're closing down the park and everything like that to help further prevent that type of vandalism.
Okay. Thank you.
Any other questions? Indra?
So Dollar Mountain Park is quite a drain on resources, and we're hoping that tourism comes in to spend in our town. Are we tracking metrics for that? And is there any kind of revenue we get because it's just a free park to come ride, right?
This is Bradley Clark, Community Development Director. I can take a first crack at that. You are right, like most of our parks, there is no fee, unlike the county parks, where there is usually some kind of fee. The city does not have that. So I think you're very much on the right sort of track in terms of how maybe you would see some cost recovery happening, and that really is going to be a tough metric to track. I don't think it's impossible. I think we would have to coordinate very closely with the eating establishments and drinking establishments and hotels, to see if maybe there's some willingness to sort of track that a little closer in terms of where their clientele is coming from. We also do have the Placer AI software that does allow us to do a little more geofencing, if you will, around certain areas that helps you to kind of estimate what those numbers are. But that doesn't bring in revenue. But I think on the whole, I think what we're seeing to get the park to where it is now is a lot of spending. But from this point forward, other than putting in this parking lot, and Josh may have some other thoughts, but I think we're really going to see those come down, especially when we have a trail coordinator now that we didn't have before, that will be dedicated in large part to Dollar Mountain, that will help us maintain that without bringing in contractors. We also have the Rogue Valley Mountain Bike Association, who has volunteers who are going to be willing to help us to maintain that. So I think once we get this first construction phase, I think the expense side we'll see really drop.
Thank you.
Yep. Any other questions from the committee? Nancy.
Thank you. Kind of along those lines, I don't believe we have any way in any of our parks to track usage. And I'm wondering on some of the things that the council thinks, or maybe even the public thinks, are good expenditures to a park that they might use frequently, but we don't know usage numbers for all of our parks. Is that correct?
That is correct, which is part of the reason why we went out and got this Placer AI data, because it will allow us to be able to run those little polygons that tell us how many people are utilizing these parks, as well as where they're going afterwards. And then for this project specifically, I think it's important to note that it's being funded through lodging tax, which is restricted type of funding. This isn't a drain on like the general fund or a drain on property taxes. This is lodging tax that per our municipal code is designed for public parks and recreational facilities, which is why we're using it for Dollar Mountain.
Thank you, Josh. And for committee, just a quick point of clarification. The topic right now, we're on lands and buildings. We'll get into community development in agenda item 7 when Brad presents, so I think we'll have an opportunity to dive into parks. So correct me if I'm wrong, JC, but right now we're talking about LB and the bathroom. Okay, questions on the bathroom? Seeing none, I'll ask you to carry on.
Next is LB 6388, page 131. We are recommending an estimation of $400,000 for funding. There are a couple of properties that council has proposed to sell. Potentially, we kind of just guessed at potentially what those properties could bring in over the next year. That doesn't mean that's what's going to happen. It's just an estimation of those dollar amounts. And with that, I'll take any questions.
Questions? Tom.
On the surplus property sales, one of the properties that the PAVE committee recommended be declared surplus and put on the market is the property at Allenwood. And there has been an architect commissioned to develop a plan. And I believe the property is slated to be sold. Is that not correct? And is there any indication of what its value might be in that process?
So the city in 2005, I think it was purchased the property with SDC Park funds for about $1.04 million. The state statute requires, a full replacement of that if we were to sell the full 9 acres. The plan and then the development that's currently underway is not utilizing the full 9 acres. So you'll see a little bit of, you'll see a number less than that. But at a minimum, it's basically looking at the appraised value of the developed acreage by the housing project. So minus the approximately 3-acre city park. So we're talking about 6 acres, at a current rate. So you're looking probably in that, between 600 and 750,000.
And what will the restrictions be on those funds?
So they would have to go back to the SDC Park Development Fund, so they would have to be used for the acquisition of new parkland.
Was there no discussion of expanding that fund to do more than just SDC waivers, or to replenish the park's SDC funds? If there's a capital gain on the property, would that have to go into the park's SDC fund?
We had a prior city attorney look at that, and his opinion was no. You're looking at just whatever that value was at the time, replenishing that dollar amount.
Thanks, Brad. Any further questions? Nancy?
So under the second paragraph there, you talk about in fiscal year 26, there was a second RFP. Can you relate that paragraph to the numbers I see below?
Yeah, so part of that potentially would be reimbursed in that estimated fiscal year 26 column, and then a potential remainder in the fiscal year 27 proposed.
And the expenditures?
That is correct. So you see that the two together in the fiscal year 26 estimated and the fiscal year 27 proposed are more than the 500 potential thousand. So there's an estimate in there for about 350, and we've also issued an RFP previously that hasn't been fully, what is the word I'm looking for, requested by from a previous award of those funds.
I get you what you want, Nancy? We're good? Okay. Any other questions? Okay, JC, carry on.
LB 6393, replacement of Cayman Pool, page 133. So I know we have, I'm on the wrong page here. $1.5 million from the URA, excuse me. We haven't necessarily defined what the project looks like, but council has authorized the city pool to receive $1.5 million of the URA.
And we'll go back to Nancy.
So I read somewhere in here that the pool loses about 30,000 gallons of water a day. Do we know what the cost of that is?
Yeah, I'm trying to think. I can look it up for you if you want the exact dollar amount. It's on our tiered rate of commercial, and so I could figure out.
I'm just trying to balance the cost of how much we're losing per day with the cost of the work that we intend to do on the pool.
It would be far less than $1.5 million, but that adds up annually.
Yeah, I'd like to know that.
Okay, any other questions on the repair, replace of Caveman Pool? Tom?
Is the URA special payment of $1.5 million in addition to the total at the beginning of this section?
That is correct.
Okay, we're putting the URA to work.
JC, if I may, I also have one. If I recall, there was some money at one point in time that was earmarked for the Caveman Pool that got reallocated to the repeaters for the radios. Was that ARPA money, or was that also URA money?
That is good memory. That is American Rescue Plan Act money, and that was moved from LB 6417, which is page 140, into the repeater, which is page or the Dollar Mountain Radio Tower, which is LB 6453, which is on page 153, and then the remaining amount potentially would go into LB 6454, the surveillance camera system equipment for police.
Okay, so just to be clear, the 1.5 that we're looking at today for Caveman Pool is above and beyond the repeaters that are already accounted for.
Correct, different funds.
Thank you. Any other questions? Seeing none, I'll ask you to carry on.
LB 6396, page 135. Fire equipment replacement. So as previously mentioned, it's getting $65,000 from the general fund contribution from fire. Another $150,000 from lands and buildings, which is coming from LB 00. So this project is going to utilize $150,000 to fund LB 6396 for fire equipment replacement, which is life packs. And if you don't know what a life pack is, it's that picture in the bottom right-hand corner of the screen right there. And I'll take any questions.
Good. Questions on fire equipment replacement? No? Okay, carry on.
LB 6437, page 146. Small parks, playground replacements and development, contributing $110,000 for parks SECs. So this project will include the development, purchase, and installation of new playground equipment for 10 playgrounds in our small city parks. In fiscal year 27, staff will be working on a plan to replace Gilbert Creek Playground, which the playground was built in 1998.
Questions on small parks playground replacement? If there are none, I do have one, is that, you have to help me understand the difference between lands and buildings and the tourism assets through lodging tax. Is this project funded through tourism facilities with lodging tax dollars?
It's a really good question. So a couple of years ago, actually, we split the projects up between small playgrounds and large playgrounds, or large parks and small parks. We view that the large parks can utilize our lodging tax dollars because they are a tourism facility, where some of our small parks in the city are not eligible for the lodging tax dollars.
Thank you for that clarification. Nancy?
So the $138,000 that's proposed, is that just for a plan to replace the equipment in Gilbert Park?
No, that's the expected cost for the entire replacement project. That's
Okay.
equipment and installation.
That makes a little more sense.
Another call for questions? Seeing none, JC, I'll ask you to proceed.
LB 6440, large park improvements and repairs. So this is page 148. And as you might have noticed, this one is eligible for lodging tax, and we are allocating $200,000 of that lodging tax. The lighting and LED upgrades to sports courts and fields are a priority due to changes in the state law.
Questions on large park improvements? Okay, I do have one there also. Is that the one, the lighting is eligible for a grant that is also helping fund that?
I'll let Josh come over here.
Yes, we're currently working on a grant through the Oregon State Parks to potentially fund about half of the project. So that would save money in this fund if we're able to get the grant.
Thank you, Josh. Any other questions on large park replacement? Okay, carry on.
LB 6450, Northwest Washington Boulevard lots, page 152. Receiving $100,000 of URA money. There's a lot to read here, so I'm not going to read it, but this is the continuation of the back half of the contract that would go for the project known as North Star. And so that total award by the URA board was $150,000, and so we estimate that that's going to carry over, and another $100,000 would be needed in fiscal year '27.
Do we have questions from the committee on the Northwest Washington Boulevard lots? Carry on.
And that's my lands and buildings, but if there are other projects that people want to ask questions, now would be the time.
Okay, Rick?
Thank you, J.C. On LB 6453 on page 153, the Dollar Mountain Radio Tower, I kept thinking the repeaters were in a different category. Are these repeaters or this is different?
So this is the equipment, and you probably have a better explanation for what the equipment is.
Hi, Councilor. It's a great question. It's all part of the equipment for the entire project. So those repeaters, each frequency has its own repeater, police, fire, and those repeaters are part of the radio tower project. So it's all together.
Okay, so it only appears here, not elsewhere, although it was mentioned
Correct.
as part of your budget. Okay, thank
Correct.
you.
Any other general questions? Tom?
J.C., thank you for the good presentation. On page 149, there are special events, and they're all good. I'm just wondering why they're considered capital projects.
It's a really good question. We were having some financial difficulties tracking each of the events, what they were making and not making. And so in order to better track the revenues in and the expenditures out, we decided to move them in here because there's a better mechanism for tracking.
Okay. Any other questions for JC? Nancy?
On page 154, LB 6454, can you talk to the camera systems?
Sounds like me again. The camera systems we have throughout the city are getting old. Technology is changes faster than we all realize. So this is part of the upgrade that we want to do within the city. And if we have any extra dollars from the radio tower project, we'll utilize that to have a more robust plan throughout the city. As a reminder, our city parks, for example, have cameras throughout. So the idea is to upgrade and have a better system to surveil certain parts of our city.
Are any of these the flock systems that I hear so much about?
No, we do have flock systems in place. That's within the PD budget.
Okay, questions for JC before we let him off the hook? Looks like you did it. Thank you, JC.
Well, thank you.
Next up, we'll have Chief Hensman join us for agenda item 5, Police Department budget presentation.
Yep.
Good evening, Chair Hopkins and committee members. Warren Hensman, Grants Pass Police Department. It's my privilege to present the police budget for fiscal '27. Behind me, you'll see kind of an overview of the agenda. We'll go over some of our goals. We'll talk about our organizational structure and budget summaries, of course, and then I'll go into some more detail, specifically with ops and support, crisis support and sobering, and talk about our service level commitment, essentially talking about the organization. As city manager mentioned, we are the biggest organization throughout the city. We have 100 FTE assigned within this budget, but there's also another number of what we call on-call staff, essentially part-time staff members that work in different areas throughout the city, like evidence, dispatch, and cadets, for example. So we have probably about 116 bodies that work within the police department. So pretty proud of the group. So essentially, just talking about public safety and our goals, and they're pretty self-explanatory behind me, but essentially we want to have a safe and vibrant and healthy neighborhood and community where we feel comfortable and safe to walk around and take care of business on a day-to-day basis. You can be guaranteed that the men and women of our organization are committed 24/7, 365 to protect and serve this community and keep it as vibrant and healthy as possible. I thought this next slide, and I utilize this slide quite often, and for those of you that know me, understand that I'm a big fan of the 2015 21st Century Plan, essentially, that was put into best practices for policing. So I think for any organization, specifically for police organizations today, it's important that we build trust and nurture that police legitimacy. Policy and oversight is very important. Of course, technology and social media. Crime reduction along with community policing is another big one, and along with training and education and officer wellness. We also kind of incorporate this with the city manager's HPO philosophy, along with our mission, our vision, our goals, along with the goals of the council and strategic plan. So every single year, or probably more than that for me, I take a close look at how we can do better and how we can build upon what we have. And the idea is to never rest on your laurels. There's always something that needs to be done, and I think something that needs to be improved upon. So the organization, it's a monster. We have a big organization for a town of 39 to 40,000 people. But we've talked about this many, many times, how here in GP, we're on an island and we have to take care of ourselves. And I feel we do a fine job maximizing the staff and resources and taking care of our community. We're a full service 24/7 policing organization. So that means we essentially do not have to rely upon anybody to do our job. And for example, we had a serious crime yesterday, and I came into the office this morning to about 20 people briefing and strategizing on how to capture a bad guy because of something that happened. And that's just part of the norm around here. We ebb and flow with violent crime and nuisance crime, and we have a lot going on. And that's why we need this complement of police personnel. So of course we have patrol, canine, traffic, our school resource officers, and I think the school marshal program gets missed quite a bit, but we're one of only 2 to my knowledge in Oregon. City of Medford actually took a page from our book, and they have a school marshal program also in Medford, so we were happy to help them with that. Our community response team, as we all know, we're still managing the unhoused population and working through some legal issues in our camps. But essentially, our community response team are out there consistently holding people accountable. We are firm, but we are fair. We help redirect folks into resources and support services, along with a lot of times taking them to jail and issuing them citations and trespassing them from different locations throughout town. Very busy, that group. Our investigations team, it's pretty nonstop for those guys. Unfortunately, we manage more violent crimes within our investigations department than I would prefer to see more of a focus on some of our property crimes as well. Unfortunately, we just do not have the staffing power to do that much work, essentially, because working a homicide, for example, takes a lot of time, and then there's a ton of follow-up as you go through the entire system. I did want to talk real quick, though, about our RAID task force. That's the Rogue Area Drug Enforcement Task Force. I've talked with council and community and staff and folks for a lot of years right now, a lot of years now since I've been here. It's very, very, very important that we do not negate the drug scene in Southern Oregon and Grants Pass. So our RAID task force officers, along with our DEA component, and you probably see some of the headlines every now and again. We have some major, major busts throughout Southern Oregon that have a direct route for Grants Pass that we thwart. So I just wanted to recognize that team. Professional standards and accreditation are very important for a lot of reasons. I am proud to share, actually excited to share, Within the next month, I believe, our dispatch center will be fully accredited. The first time our dispatch center has been accredited through the Oregon Accreditation Alliance. We have been accredited before through a national organization, but since I came on board, that had dropped, and it's been my goal, it's been our goal to re-accredit the dispatch center, and they are just a couple weeks from being accredited here in Oregon, so that's good news. Our SWAT team, crisis negotiations, property evidence, and CSOs, cadets, and parking enforcement kind of hone in on that operations section. And then, of course, we are the 911 PSAP for Josephine County, so we are the dispatch and the answering point call takers. And then in our records department, we have our record specialists that manage an overwhelming amount of paperwork that comes through the department. So now we'll kind of take a look at the numbers. So as you see, there's a change of about $1.7 million. For me, this year, it was very important for me to be flat. I wanted to thank the council and community and this budget committee for supporting the increase in staffing. My budget this year is relatively easy to explain as far as the additions, because that number essentially looks at the 6 additional personnel, increases in salary, and then with some direct charges, and we'll talk about that in the next couple of slides with the building payment. But besides that, and you'll see throughout my presentation that we've come in incredibly flat, and I wanted to make sure we were we were very specific to come in as flat as possible because of these additional bodies. Intentional was the word I was looking for, intentional. And then you kind of see it here. So our police budget, that's the increase, that difference there from last year to this year. That $1.7 million essentially takes up about $980,000 in additional personnel costs. And then you add some additional materials and services, direct and indirect charges, which is very small actually. In the next couple of slides, we'll go through some of that. You'll see in our support section, you'll see a decrease. I don't believe we've seen that in quite a while, if ever, since I've been here. But that's a direct result of what JC mentioned with the IT equipment replacement account, because we're using those dollars wisely to offset general fund expenses within this fiscal year. So that is shown right there with a lot of that number. The Crisis Support and Sobering Center, no increases, no changes. It's been that number for quite a while. We will most likely have to take a look at increasing Sobering Center, probably more like next year. With Crisis Support, they have a lot of different funding streams, but I'm always willing to sit down with that team and see what we can do to support that mission. And I'll talk more about that as we go into it. But as crime decreases a lot within the United States and here in Grants Pass, unfortunately domestic violence calls for service continue to go up, and our usage of the Sobering Center, we'd be lost without it. Regarding the Sobering Center too, I am excited about a new program that we started that I'll continue to talk about as we go through these slides, but it's regarding our deflection program. And I think most of you know that we already have a partnership with ADAPT Integrated Health Options, and with our ADAPT partnership, for example, anytime there's an overdose here in the city, somebody will be dispatched to support that individual, seek some type of a service. The Sobering Center has since taken on an outreach along with their current deflection program, so they can actually be a bit of a boot on the ground to get out there and meet people where they are, so they can encourage them more and more. Because for those of you that know, and I look to Councilor Crone, who probably knows this, you have to get people when they're ready, and if you miss them when they're ready, then it's a lost opportunity. So our deflection program housed within the Sobering Center is also supported by the police department in the tune of approximately $50,000, but that money comes from opioid settlement dollars. So that's the opioid settlement dollars are being spent wisely on programs throughout the city, like Sobering and the ADAPT for example. And then that debt service, that increase, that's a double payment to the building. JC and I will be, and the city manager will be trying to figure out what does this balloon payment look like and how do we want to refinance the last couple of years of the PD. Okay, and then continuing on to the police operations, and I kind of primed you all for these numbers. Those personnel services, of course, the majority of that money goes to the 6 FTEs. I was very, again, specific in the type of FTE that I think we need for the organization. It's 5 police officers and 1 CSO. So that will bolster, for example, our police officer numbers from 57 to 62, and then it bumps up our CSOs, that extra body as well. Historically, we have lost and we have ebbed and flowed with CSOs and police officers. I believe that a number of 62 sworn police officers for the city of Grants Pass is a sweet spot. Now we just got to hire them and keep them on board. Hiring is another monster, and we can chat about that later. As far as our materials and services, I think it's important to recognize within this line item, because sometimes I even forget about it, that this includes a lot of the grant dollars that we expect year in and year out, like the opioid settlement dollars, forfeiture money, the domestic violence high-risk team grant, and a traffic grant, along with other equipment and supplies that are so essential for running the organization. And then for the contractual and police services, you see a decrease on that. Again, it goes back to what the city manager was saying. If we feel we don't need something, we're not gonna push it year in and year out. But with those contractual services, that has a lot of the revolving fees and cost. For example, our Axon body cameras, you'll see mine here. We are pretty tech heavy in policing, and it's really expensive, and it continues to go up. Also, too, you'll see with the direct charges, and that'll have, if you think about what exactly our direct charges are, we're talking vehicle maintenance, vehicle replacement, insurance, internet, phone, finance department charges, etc., GIS maintenance, and then LB replacement fund. And then those indirect charges would all include the administrative fees, IT fees, and the GIS fees. And because of the size of our department, our administrative fees are heavy, 1.2 million, IT fees, 444,000, and GIS fees, about $74,000. And then the debt service, we have already spoken about. We cannot forget what a team looks like, and some of the most important team members are what you see behind me with our 911 communications and our records division. Our 911 communications went through this phase where it was really stinking difficult to hire good people and to keep them. And I think 911 throughout Oregon and the country, in fact, are seeing the same, and they're struggling. We, knock on wood, are doing really, really well. We will have, as of the next couple of weeks, every single dispatcher filled with a body, the majority fully trained, and then we just have 2 call taker spots. I think actually 1 call taker spot left to fill, which should not be too hard. The idea with the call taker spot, and if you remember, that call taker position comes from 911 excise tax fees, that really gives an individual an opportunity to come in and not be as stressed out as a dispatcher who has to learn PD, EMS, and call taking. So this way we get folks to come in as a call taker initially. They can feel it out, get trained up, and then if they decide they want to move on to one of those open 911 dispatcher positions, they can jump onto that one. And then with our records division, these guys are fantastic. This crew you see behind me, one of the only records teams in Oregon that actually answer calls for service as well as their job. So they're actually taking non-emergent calls, entering that into the system, forwarding that to dispatch. Dispatch will send the call to the police officer. So they do a whole bunch of stuff as well as that records processing, etc., that you see behind me on the screen. And then we come to the police support section, and we've just been pretty fortunate to stay, as you can see behind me, super flat. But also please know that we have not, we're not going to be hurt by any of these numbers that you see. I would imagine one of the questions that will come out is, hey chief, do you have enough money to operate your organization efficiently and effectively? And the answer is yes. Again, the personnel services, that's just basic increases for contractual employees. Materials and service, we talked about that. That decrease mainly comes from the IT replacement account opportunity, which is great. Then contractual and professional services, a small amount. And within this group, that deals with our Tyler annual maintenance, and that's the system that runs dispatch and our patrol officers, our utility service, internet software, etc. So we have quite a few contractual services within a dispatch center and a records center, as you could imagine. And then for our direct and indirect charges, we see a small reduction, and that's dealing with liability insurance, again, on the direct charges, phone, internet, and then some finance services. And then the indirect charges would be those administrative fees, IT fees, and GIS. Thanks for the discount. I think we talked about some discounting earlier, so I appreciate that. You know, this is a topic, and crisis support services, we have an amazing relationship, amazing partnerships. I talked about the domestic violence high-risk team and what we do as an organization. But here in Grants Pass, we're second to none when it comes to partnerships and how we go after suspects and how we support victims and survivors of a variety of different crimes. The fact that there was 1,200 residents utilizing services from Women's Crisis Support Team is disturbing to me. And I'm very concerned about domestic homicide, and thank God that is not something that happens here in Grants Pass, at least not in my time. But we have to be very careful to prevent these type of things from happening. And that's why we have a domestic violence high-risk team, for when we see the signs of this happening within a relationship, then we can support that individual and give them the shelter and the support that they need. And then the Sobering Center, this is another number that I actually hate to see, but we use it quite a bit, 386 folks that we've put into the Sobering Center. And obviously you can see how all the other agencies utilize the Sobering Center as well. Sobering Center is absolutely fantastic, and I would much prefer to house somebody in sobering than to lock them up on, let's say, a DOC charge, a trespass charge, or something else, so they can avoid the criminal justice system at all costs. We recognize people make mistakes. Some people, we also know, have to go to jail, and they need to be within the system so they can change that behavior. But a lot of people really just need several hours in the Sobering Center. And then the good part about the Sobering Center is that they're provided opportunities for services on their way out. So our service level commitment, and for me, is just, it's never going to change. We're always going to provide professional law enforcement services. We're going to do our best to be a state-of-the-art 911 center. With that accreditation around the corner, I think it kind of speaks for itself. We have a full service record section. Our partnerships, as I've mentioned, with Options, Adapt, Sobering, are wonderful for outreach. And then as I speak about some of our partnerships, again, let's not forget with Options for Southern Oregon, we have not one, but 2 case managers built into the PD. So they support our officers with their mission and supporting people that need to be redirected into services. We want to continue our school resource officer program along with the school marshal program, and that partnership that we have with District 7, which is fantastic. Thanks D7 for continuing to work well with us, and we really support each other, and I thank you for that. You may have heard me speak about intelligence-led briefing that we introduced a little while ago. It's kind of like CompStat. It's a way to keep ourselves accountable. It's to look at the numbers, to look at the beats, see what's going on, ask the question why, and then essentially hold ourselves accountable to what are we doing so we can draw some reductions in crime within our city. And then maintain those adequate staffing levels for all PD personnel, not just police. We definitely want to bolster the community response team. I look forward to seeing some positive change within the campsites and Parker's Place, but I also believe that we will see displacement theory happen, we'll probably see some high numbers of behavior problems within our parks again, but we're preparing ourselves for that. Then, of course, the livability and nuisance crime focus. So my summary essentially is our police officers, detectives, dispatchers, CSOs, records specialists, support personnel, supervisors, and volunteers are doing an outstanding job during continuous challenging times. But we're forward-thinking, we're a best practice organization, we fail forward, we're courageous leaders, and we do what it takes. We can take it on the chin when the community's frustrated, and we have good dialogue and are able to respectfully and professionally converse with community as to why things happen within our community, and that goes from resources to legislative decisions that happen that have an impact on everybody. That's it for me, so do you have any questions? I think I did that in record time.
You did good. Thank you, Chief
JC was
Hensman,
timing
and
me.
Thank you not only for your presentation, but to you and your incredible team for your service to our community. If I could, I will open it up to the committee for questions on Chief Hensman's presentation.
Thank you, Chair.
Rick?
Thank you, Chief. You're doing a great job.
Thank you, sir.
Can you go back to the Sobering Center statistic? Okay, it says 386 cases. So during the course of the year, what is the occupancy rate at the Sobering Center? Is it like 50% every day or 10% or?
That's a great question. I know exactly where you're going. They stay fairly full. I don't think we've ever had an issue where we were turned away because they were full. So I'm guesstimating, I don't know this number. Some days are lower than others, obviously, and times of the day are lower than others, but we've always had room available to bring folks to sobering.
Okay, thank you. I'm glad to hear that it is being used and you have the opportunity to take up additional people.
Yeah, and just to add to that too, Counselor, which might be of interest, when someone is stopped for, let's say, a DUI infraction, the Sobering Center gives us an ability to bring somebody to the Sobering Center to do the sobriety testing and the Intoxilizer 5000 where you blow into the machine, and then we can release them from there to a party, or we can actually release them to the Sobering Center instead of going to the jail. So we can utilize it for a lot of different options.
I'm going to take the liberty while you're on that slide to sneak mine in, because you show shared resources with other agencies, OSP and the sheriff. Are there shared expenses or contributions from those agencies in operating the Sobering Center?
To my knowledge, the only one that has a shared expense is Asante. I can't speak to the others. My thought is no on the rest.
Okay. Thank you. Other questions from the committee? We'll go Nancy and then Tom.
Thank you for keeping us safe. We do appreciate it. I had some questions about your new hires. Are there training costs involved with the new hires, and where would that be in the budget?
Yeah, there's always training costs involved. We have training built into each section of the budget. And over the years, when we've talked about cutting budget for a lot of different reasons, one of the things that we did not do, and I appreciate the council and the city management, we did not cut anything from our training budget. Maintaining a solid training budget to keep our folks appropriately trained, and advanced training is incredibly important, and that's already built into the budget. So those training expenses are already in there.
Is that built in under where it just says personnel services, or?
Yes, it is.
Okay. And it seems like throughout the year, one of the concerns has been a turnover, that you get people trained and then they leave for other positions in other counties or state police. Do you currently have a hiring contract that they sign that they would be required, once they're trained, to serve for so many years in the community? Or they would have to pay some training cost back to the community?
Yeah, it's a great question. We do not. However, if we, let's say, hire a brand-new police officer, we put them through DPSST, which is the state academy, and they leave within a certain window, and I forget what that window is, I think it's less than 2 years, and go to a different agency. That different agency is responsible for paying a portion of their training back to this PD.
Have we considered a hiring contract for your new employees?
No, we haven't, and while I understand your thought process on that, recruitment and retention is difficult enough as it is, and I think that could be a hindrance to hiring people. But I will tell you that we do not lose a lot of people to other agencies. At all, in fact. We do lose them occasionally, but we don't lose a lot of people to different agencies.
So your turnover rate's fairly low?
Our turnover rate's pretty decent, yeah. It's hiring people that's really difficult. Now, we still see the normal attrition. We'll have folks that might go to the SO because it will be a better fit for them. We might have folks that go to Jackson County because that'll be a better fit for them. But we don't necessarily see so many people leaving where we'd have to even consider that. In fact, most people that don't want to stay here, a lot of times it's because of our pace. But essentially, we don't have that problem.
I've got Tom.
Chief, thank you for that thorough presentation. I appreciate it. On page 146, the budget for the police division, contractual and professional services is the third item under requirements. And in the actuals for 25, that was 2.5 million. For 26, the budget was 1.2, and for 27, 1.2. That's a dramatic decline. Is there any particular reason? Are you just not needing as much contract service, or?
I got you, Chief.
Yeah, thank you. I
So
was going to
this
go
is-
JC help.
This is that change we made last year. So if you look at the line directly below it, we changed the allocation of resources to direct charges for certain things where they used to be within contractual professional services.
Indra?
I have some questions on those line items as well. So intergovernmental, we get some revenue pretty steady with the police division, not so much with the support services. What is that revenue from?
So you're talking about intergovernmental agreements would be things like the 911 agency, would be the District 7 school district for the school marshals. So that's what they're talking about there.
Okay. And then the public safety fees went up really high from 24 to 25. What are those fees?
Can you give me some more direction, Counselor?
Yeah, that's the
Under
public.
public safety fees under intergovernmental, the next line down.
Yep, that's a good question. I can take that. So June of 2024 is when council implemented the public safety utility fees. And that was only 1 month of actuals for 2024, and then you'll get a full year in 2025. And then following suit, a similar trend in 26 and 7.
Oh, the $12 on the water bill, is that what you're talking about?
The city charges utility fees.
Okay, thank you for that reminder. That's all for me, thank you. Thank you, Chief.
Other questions from the committee? Okay, thank you, Chief.
Thank you.
All right, we'll go from Chief Hensman to Chief Sanchez. Agenda item 6, fire rescue budget presentation.
Yeah, and while we're waiting for Chief Sanchez to come up, I will answer the question that was previously asked about the 33,000 gallons of water. So every 748 gallons is considered one unit. 1 unit of commercial/public, which would be where the pool would be classified, is $1.68. So 33,000 gallons just for water alone is approximately a little bit under $75.
Thank you, J.C. Chief Sanchez, the floor is yours.
Well, good evening, everyone. Thank you for being here. Budget committee members, council members, staff, I really appreciate this opportunity. I'm honored and privileged to do this for the second time now here in Grants Pass, and we have a great team, from the X team to council, and just the amazing changes that have taken course over this last year has been really, really significant in the public safety and how we're serving this community. So before I begin, I wanted to say a special thanks to my team as well, because since we've started this and the endeavor and the partnership with your unanimous vote for the 6 FTEs that we now have on the ground as of April 19th, they've been through training. We've increased a lot of service, we've increased training, we've increased inspections, and I will be happily and excitedly talking about that in the next and throughout this presentation. So kind of a quick overview, our presentation, department overview of the organization, the department goals, and our budget summary, and then questions as we go through this. As you see in one of these pictures, though, I wanted to see, this is a picture that we took this year, and that front truck right there, we call it Heavy Brush 67 now. It says 69 sticker on there, but it's 67 now. But that is an OSFM grant-funded engine. It's a Type 3. And I'll be talking a little bit about what we've been doing with that this past year with the deployments and the conflags. They wanted that picture too. We are, one of the nice things is I went up to Salem last Tuesday, and one of the great things that our team has been doing through work with the city manager as well and allowing us to do this is we deployed a conflags. Just because it doesn't happen and burn right here in our city, it can be our problem if we don't go out. Just like the Moon Complex wasn't that far away, the flat fire, all that stuff, but we get reimbursed for that. Not to mention, we got this engine for free, and they're really happy with us using this engine when they call upon us. So when we use that, we will hopefully and willingly be able to keep this engine after the 5-year grant contract is up. So I wanted to celebrate that with our teams and with everybody with the utilization of this equipment. So going over 2025, some awesome pictures there that we put in there, but as you guys know, we serve a little over 40,000 people. We're responding to mutual aid in Jackson and Josephine County. That is a mutual aid compact too. They come into our zone when we need them for any large incidences, resulting in around 5,156 calls. 56% of those are EMS, and I will dive into that a little bit more in a second. That's around 2,800, 2,900 calls. Now, a significant number, as you know, as we talk about our budget a little bit more in the future, last year we had 1,208 medic zeros. Now, I think most of you have heard me talk about that before, but that's when you call 911 and an ambulance is not available. So we'll hear that on the radio, and we get medic zero, or they let us know medic zero before a call even comes in because there is none available within our county. That's significant. Now, we've taken steps as Grants Pass Fire Rescue and with your partnership to fill that gap. That is reflected in our budget this year. That gap is being filled by now, previously, we had an oversight, a partnership from AMR. So oftentimes we would have to wait on scene a little bit for certain medications. We would have to wait on scene sometimes for certain treatment capabilities. We have now brought that in-house. We have now also contracted with our own medical director, which is required by ORS and OAR, and we will be taking care of that. So when we show up on scene, we can do everything except for transport. You are not waiting for AMR. Those 1,208 medic zeros, when you show up and we serve our citizens, our guys can do everything except for transport. And we've brought that in-house. We've done that you'll see that reflection in there in our budget with some of the increases this year. We are one step away from bringing also the schedule on the narcotics that are required for intubation. Knocking people down, we say, is a term that we use. But we'll knock you out, we'll paralyze you, we'll be able to intubate you. Seizure drugs as well, when people have seizures. Before, in the past, we had to wait, and there was a delay. We are no longer going to be doing that here very, very soon. Fire-related incidences, we've had an increase in fire calls, about 13%. Our average response time, which I'm really proud of overall in the city, is around 4.5 minutes. So I wanted to highlight that and highlight our team. As you guys know, we don't just respond to fires. We do EMS, medical and vehicle extrications, hazardous materials, swift water rescue. We literally do it all. We're an all-hazard fire department. I wanted to reflect on this ICS chart a little bit. Before I came to you last year with this ICS chart, we had a vacancy already in the Deputy Chief Operations. We have filled that. We have Deputy Chief Delisle doing a great job there, internal. And then we have 6 brand new firefighters. Again, they're on the ground, and thank you for that unanimous vote. Thank you for that support. They are doing a fantastic job. 5 of them are from the area. So they already have experience, and one of them is pretty new, and he's doing a fantastic job as well. This also supports our public safety initiative as we go into this and as we respond in the city. So before, we had an average of 2 people on an engine. I'm not changing the minimum staffing. We discussed this before. The minimum staffing is still going to be 7 for the city, so we're not shooting to increase overtime. We're not shooting to increase the overall cost of making sure that it's mandatory to have 3-man engines. But more often than not now, we have 3-man engines. So when a call happens that used to require 2 engines, like a code, where like you saw with that LB earlier, buying new life packs because they're over 10 years old and we need to buy new ones, we would have to send a minimum of 2 engines and a battalion chief. Now with a 3-man engine and a battalion chief, we have everyone we need to respond to that code. Now we have 2 available units to respond to the other calls that are happening in our city and combating those medic zeros that are currently happening. So instead of sending 2, we only have to send 1 now. So you've increased the public safety for our citizens with that investment that you guys have all given us. So thank you very much. It's also helped with our overtime. I remember I stood up here before and I was telling you they were averaging over 450 hours of overtime a year. If you take the department as a whole per person, we are going to be dropping that here shortly, and those numbers are already starting to show us because we have the metrics that I've been sharing with my lovely city manager and I'm going to say finance director. I'm going to use that one. The finance director, that once you see that these guys are there, now we have those spots are filled. So we've been struggling with PLO just like everybody else in this state, and keeping everything going with that and that overtime that's through this has already made a noticeable impact, and you can see the dollar signs already. And I can't wait to share that with you after a year of it being in service. We're not staying the same, we're growing stronger, and this is a direct result because of you guys, and thank you again. All right, so going into what we've been doing. Technical rescue, we've expanded on some of this. I don't know if you remember when I first got here, the previous person, who will not be named, was buying a vehicle for himself. We transferred that into a UTV. That UTV now has a wildland sked on the back and an EMS sked on the back. Now, that comes with more capabilities that we're investing in, but it also comes with reimbursement potential because we are about to hopefully get this contract here shortly. And the contract is if we go out, if we have the personnel during that time, not a contract that we're bound by, to go out and be a REMS team, Rapid Extrication Module Support Team. That being said, it's anywhere from $10,000, $12,000 a day, depending on the contract, when you send that team out, and that's all coming back reimbursable to us. That's revenue. Also, while it supports our city. So just on a conflag or a deployment, that's a reasonable way for us to make some money. It's not going to pay for employees completely, but it will help replace equipment and grow our department from that standpoint. Just like when we go out to conflags, there is some revenue from it. I also wanted to highlight the Swiftwater Rescue, Miss Patty, that was a private donation. Our engine company inspections. This is a big deal. Because of your investment, our engine company inspections have gone up. We weren't doing them since COVID. We are now doing an average of 30 a month additionally, what our fire inspector and fire marshal are doing. So we've increased that significantly. We're in the buildings more. We are doing pre-plans more, which is also causing our city to be safer, and it also goes into our ISO. As you know that my goal is to be the first Class 1 fire department in the state of Oregon. And there's only 500, just over 500 out of 45,000 in the United States. So training hours as we go into this. We also we do SWAT medics as well with police, which is a fantastic program that we share. I also wanted to say too that there's 3 fire stations and 1 police station. That's technically true. Chief Hensman does like to moonlight as a firefighter. So they are in all of our stations as well. We do share. We have police at Parkway, we have police at Hillcrest, police equipment at Hillcrest, and we also have a nice K-9 fencing and training little area at Redwood. So that is one way that we also share. We share the cost-cutting measures and too in this high-performance organization. A really thing, I put a bold on the student firefighter program. We just received, last week, I made sure I didn't hold on to the check for more than at the time it took me to drive straight to finance, $150,000 private donation. If you guys remember, the student firefighter program was cut due to cost-cutting measures. We got a private donation from a Mr. Ron Loins, who also donated to Miss Patty not too long ago through relationships with our city manager and us to fund our student firefighter program for the next 3 years at least. I believe it will go further, so in July 1st, we're gonna start ramping that up, and that cost is gonna be completely funded by grants. So when you see that in the budget overall, that all of a sudden it was nothing, and now there's 150, private donation, huge success. Our fire prevention program. As you guys know, we have a fire marshal, Deputy Fire Marshal Joe Hyatt. We have our inspections. Just to go over some of those numbers, you'll see 1,300 inspections, 400 re-inspections, 550 violations addressed, 128 plan reviews, participation in all of our events, our food vendor, our food trucks inspections, overall fire and life safety of those events. All of this stuff has increased in the last year. This is investment from you guys, this is investment from our team, and I wanted to tell them thank you as well. Fire and life, our prevention teams, as you guys know, though, I'm going to highlight this other thing that we just received as well, which took some doing, but we're in this GPS, the high school student safety program, the child car seat program. We give out a bunch of car seats a year through a grant that we have. That's one of our LB items. We train and we have certified technicians. Our fire investigations, the Rogue Valley too as well. We're involved more than we ever were before with the Rogue Valley Fire Chiefs with standing protocols to go back and forth. The Smokey Bear campaign. Have you guys seen the pictures of us running around with Smokey Bear in all of our schools and elementary schools? It's been fantastic. I know that the schools really love it. Now for the fun part, because everybody likes to hear this great part too. I don't know if you guys heard about an OSFM grant that we used to have that we kind of lost from the county. There's $296,000 in that was tied up before. It is not tied up anymore. As of 2 weeks ago, we got permission from the state. We now have, within our entire jurisdiction, we are able to spend $296 on defensible space. That defensible space goes to anybody we're going to be announcing this. We have training on Friday. They're coming down. So I'm tallying this up. That's $450 of investment from a grant and from a private donor so far. So, and that's just this year. Now we can go to your house. We can focus on 5 to 10 feet. We can remove, like people like to put the arborvitaes next to their house. We can remove those. We can replace it with gravel. We can even give you a gift card for $250. Not only can we do that, we're able to pay the contractors out of this grant, and it doesn't cost us overtime or anything. This wasn't a part of the grant before. This was working through the state and the partnership, where we have our guys going out there writing these prescriptions using Survey 123, and that grant will cover our guys' time to go out there and survey and do that as well. So this is a fully funded grant from OSFM in a partnership with the state, and it's a big win for us. All right, so the fire rescue goals, ISO Class 1. This is a huge deal for us. We've been chasing that down. This is from your investment. We have a 325% increase in training hours. Some of those weren't being recorded correctly. Now they're being recorded correctly. Also, our training has increased. We went, just to give you an example, 2,600 hours in 2024. We are now 8,723 hours in 2025. That directly goes to our scoring for ISO for chasing down that Class 1. I already talked to you about inspections. I talked to you about the con flags as well. Our EMS system and strength. I brought that up for you guys already. What we've been able to do with our new systems, with our new treatment capabilities, with our new medications, with our medical director that's strictly for us. So some of those increases that you see when I'm getting to this slide, that's all in relation to this. Our prevention and community risk reduction. That was the big win with OSFM, that $300,000 investment that we have into our city. Our partnership and stewardship, we've been going to Salem, as I said, last weekend. We've been going to the OFCA, Oregon Fire Chiefs Association. We've been at the state legislature. We've done 2 testimonies as well. Our team, our unions participating, all of this has been paying off in our favor. Logistics and readiness. Some of the increase from this, when you'll see, is asset tracking. Before, we had a lack of asset tracking. We did. Now we brought it into the program, first due that we already have, but also that comes at a cost. So We're adding RFID as well, so when you walk out of the room, it gives us live asset tracking from our EMS supplies to everything that's in our engine from our capital assets. So it will no longer be assumptions, it'll be live data, and we'll be able to tell you from consumables to durables, and I'll be able to tell you exactly what's in our inventory. I also wanted to highlight some of the things that City Manager Kubik was mentioned earlier. We had a need for AEDs in the city, and through the partnership with the X team, we were able to purchase 24 AEDs, and you'll see that those are around 11 of them going to police, the rest going to fire, our parks, and updating our AEDs that are a problem, that were really outdated and some just not working, not reliable, and we've been able to do that, which is a big deal. And because of that, these things are also, they send an email out if there's an issue, straight to the teams that monitor them. So there's no longer a delay from waiting once a year when you walk around and check them. You get an email if the battery's bad or if the patches are about to expire, and it sends it right to the team that's responsible for monitoring them, so we can take care of that fast. All right, into the budget. So our personnel services, thank you again. That one's explanatory. We have six new FTEs. Our materials and supplies, you'll see that increase there of $18,000, that 5%. That is a direct relation to simply, we have to outfit them as well. We've never had them before, and we've had to outfit them. Our contractual and professional services, everywhere from the software I was talking to you about, from the EMS equipment that we're taking over, that we're required by ORS to take care of, and OAR. From the medical director contract, we have to have a contract with him. We have to have that oversight. It's actually required by law to have that oversight for our paramedics to operate at this capacity. So that does a direct relation for that. Your direct and indirect charges, Chief Hensman did a great job on describing that and saying what all those are from our administrative and to our fleet maintenance and everything from IT. So I don't think I need to repeat that again. But overall, we went from a $10.2 million to $12 million budget, and that is a direct relation. Now, the metrics are also in support of what's happening in our city with this, and I wanted to thank all of you for that. The other thing that I wanted to mention that is a big thing that we did this year that I did last year is the janitorial. I got rid of we actually had janitorial services for our station. I got rid of that contract. I reallocated what was left of that contract, which was about $20,000. We moved it towards LifeScan. We did LifeScan this year. If you guys haven't heard about this, firefighters and police have an average lifespan, depending on which data you read, 5 to 7 years after they retire, they die. But if you're paying attention and you're watching, you're monitoring every year, like an NFPA physicals requirement that we have, it's in CBA as well for a physical. We already had, where we did the LifeScan this year, where we have identified cancer in some of our guys, found it early, and the expense, that saves us on workman's comp, that saves us on insurance, everything else, because now we're not finding it out later when it's really bad, we're finding it out early. And that was a huge win, a huge success for our department. That was, you'll see where some of the professional service and contract increase was. Along with, we did some money saving measures as well. Tyler MTTs, the CADs that we have, those big computers you see in our cars, we were paying $500 each for that. We've also gone the other way too. We moved it to iPads and moved to a different program, and now we're paying $150 each for all of our assets for that instead of $500 each, just as some cost saving measures to work towards improving that. Summary, to kind of go over this, and then I'll be ready for questions. The $300,000 from OFSM grant, the $150 from a private donation. I love highlighting that because that's community partnership. I also want to, you'll see our station being painted here soon from a community partnership. Sherman-Williams has agreed to paint Station 8 Parkway for free. We went out for an RFP for that. It was $150 before. They agreed they're going to do a whole thing on it. I can't wait to post about it and everything. I've actually asked 3 times because I didn't believe it. They are going to be painting our entire station for free. So instead of me standing up here telling you like, hey, this is really faded and I want to get another LB budget for this, this is us going out there working, seeking private funding from the city, and Sherman-Williams has agreed to do it. So I wanted to highlight that and what they're doing with us as well. No, the outside. The whole outside. It's really faded, and they're going to be doing it for us. We're really excited. So, I wanted to say thank you too for the life packs that we're updating and everything you guys have been partnering with us over the last year. The personal and health and well-being of our department has been great. I do want to say something that's really important. You've heard up here a lot that our guys always go to Medford. One of you asked a question about that about police. Medford hired 8 recently. The first time, and you can ask our union, in over a decade, nobody applied to go to Medford. Nobody left. And that's a testament to you guys, that's a testament to our team, that's a testament to what we're doing here, and I wanted to make sure that that was a big highlight. Our guys also take stuff out of their own pockets, so, and they help with car accidents and fire victims. They hand out gift cards out of their own pockets, and I wanted to make sure that I highlight that too. So this culture we're building, this culture that we have here is it's unique, and I wanted to make sure I shared that with you guys. So that's kind of the summary, that's the overall budget, and I'm ready for your questions.
Okay, thank you, Chief Sanchez. And again, like with Chief Hensman, I'd like to take a moment to thank your team as well to their service to our community. With that, I would open it to the committee for questions for Chief Sanchez. Go ahead, Adriana.
Well, I'm thoroughly impressed with what you've done since you got here, and I have no idea what it takes to become an ISO Class 1, but I'm so sure you'll get us there.
Thank you.
My question is, what is the outreach like for education on defensible space, especially for like the elderly who aren't online?
That's a great question. So April 30th, we actually have OSFM coming down, one of their trainers, because we have a program that we're required to use, which we use for damage assessments and everything as well within the state. So like if a fire happens, it's the same program. So it's called Survey 123. So what we do is we train our guys, we make sure that we're in compliance with that. And then the outreach is gonna be public from social media posts to, as well as our guys going to see you face to face with this grant, as well as the city manager can mention. We're gonna be talking about it, we're gonna be blasting it in a podcast. If the radio show wants to ask, the outreach is gonna be there, but I didn't wanna put the cart before the horse before we did that. But now that I have in writing permission to use it for this, we're excited. The outreach is gonna be as much as we can get out there from every platform.
And who's driving this boat? I don't know if that's the right word, driving. This
Full-
new boat, is it a firefighter?
So actually, it's a partnership. It's my team. None of this is done by myself. None of it. As you guys heard me say, thank you to the council, everybody. This is all of us working together. So we have our entire shift working through, and then extra coming in. So we will all be sharing the load. So when you see, one day you'll see me out there having a good time talking to our neighbors, till you'll see one of our firefighters out there having a good time talking and writing these prescriptions. We call them prescriptions, and getting that funding spent on our city.
I meant Miss Patty.
Oh, I'm sorry.
I'm excited about that.
So Miss Patty, we have a Swiftwater rescue team. We have boat operators that are signed off from here just past, a good point if people don't know the river, just past River's Edge, but all the way up towards, if we end up having a large incident and we call everybody, we share that mutual aid, we can go up to Shady Cove. But that's very large incident, like flooding and stuff. Down to Robertson's Bridge, they're signed off and trained. And we have boat operators on every shift. And then they continue to grow, we get them signed off. Battalion Chief Nelson does a good job getting them signed off. Captain Wassenberg does a great job getting them signed off. And then the Swiftwater Rescue Team is typically taught by Captain Josh Ward.
Okay, other questions? Rick?
Thank you, Chief, for all that you do. On the incident information, EMS is 56% and fire 6%. In the long range, do you see a change in vehicles to address the percentage of emergency services?
So long range, if we're going back to the goals in EMS, as that would be a discussion with council and with city manager, there is a potential in the future, and we're talking 3 to 5 years to discuss that. But I would say right now, what we need to continue to focus on is expanding. So when we show up, making sure that we're ready to do everything minus the transport, because we don't have a transport vehicle, and there's a separate license for that. And there's also a contract through the county, an ASA, an ambulance service agreement, that is owned basically by AMR right now. So we're not stepping into that space. But in the future, if that's something that you guys would like to talk about, and a couple of years from now, we're more than happy to have that discussion with you.
Thank you.
Any other questions? Go ahead, Eric.
Thank you, Chief. That was a great presentation. Really appreciate the energy, appreciate everything that you've done. I had a question in terms of, we've spoken about it before, in terms of insurance rates, in a time when all of our taxes are going up, and with everything that we have coming in the future, can you speak to the general public's average insurance rates probably going down because of as a result of what's been taking place?
Yeah, so when you're discussing ISO, correct, sir? Right. So, as I mentioned before, when you're talking that class 2, that class 1, not only does that help with the standard problem in Oregon right now with people getting denied insurance within our response jurisdiction. This doesn't go out. I don't want the people to think that this goes out way into Josephine County. This is where our responsibility is. Now, your private citizen will see around 400 and change, depending on which literature you read, per $100,000 assessed. Less, if you go to the 1, is what, depending on which literature you read. The commercial businesses, which attracts businesses, can see anywhere from, and it depends, because this is private insurance company, and then they take along their other stuff. So some says a commercial business will get 2%, some say a commercial business will get 10% discount. So, and that's the range that is out there that you can look at.
Thank you.
No problem.
Go ahead, Tom.
Thank you, Chief. Good thorough report. One of the categories on page 138 is false alarms. 7.2% of calls apparently are false alarms. Do you have a policy to charge for excessive false alarm calls at a single location?
So this is a discussion, I'm glad that you brought that up. This is a discussion that, as the city manager mentioned earlier too, alluded to earlier too, in the future, if there is an appetite in the future for fire prevention fees, and there's an appetite for EMS and all those things, there is a way for us to deal with that, yes. But as of right now, we have not been sending out billing for false alarms or excessive use of the 911 system.
Okay, Indra?
In the personnel chart, the Firewise coordinator is not budgeted. Is that gone, that position?
That's a great question. That actually is directly, so we used to receive funding directly from the county from that. This was before my time. But that is exactly what we were able to fix. That's that OSFM grant. So we weren't able to touch that before. And we were able to fix that. So now that $300,000 is open to us in the residents of City of Grants Pass. And the WUI boundary. I didn't say that, the WUI boundary. So if you're right on the boundary of Grants Pass and then that wild land urban interface, we are able to use that funding in that area. Great question.
And back to you, Tom.
Just wanted to follow up on the insurance question. Insurance rates are going up.
Yes, sir.
Dramatically. Oh, yeah. And I think a lot of property owners are very concerned about their insurance rates. I had a big increase in property insurance, and I went to my agent and I asked him about how they determine the rates. Mm-hmm. And since you've been talking about ISO ratings, I asked him about that and how it would affect. And he said State Farm doesn't use the ISO system. Do they use a different approach that would be influenced by a higher ISO rating, or how would that interface?
So it's funny that I love when they say that. Just like they didn't use the wildfire map, right? They didn't use the wildfire map. Now, ISO, they'll say that they don't use ISO directly, some of them. Now, ISO has the parameters. So our response time's faster, how many people show up on scene when you call when a structure fire happens, what our water supply is, which I have to give Jason a huge credit on that. They use all those parameters, just like when you do your house, they always ask you, what do they ask you, how far is from your house when you're doing fire insurance? A fire hydrant. So all of those is that ISO rating. So they might not say that they're going to use Veritas as another word for ISO. They might not use just what that is, but they use all of those parameters. So we will be the gold standard of the parameters that they do use. Great question.
Other questions? Okay, if there are none, I do have two for you, Chief Sanchez. One probably simple and I missed it, but on page 139, you've got a line item of other revenue. Previously, it's ranged 10, maybe 20,000, and we're showing it at 92,000 this year. What feeds into that and would lead to that large of an increase? Line item JC, other revenue, page 139.
The other revenue, I believe, and correct me if I'm wrong, JC, that's us reflecting the private donation.
Excellent, thank you. And then my last question, you mentioned some of the work you're doing with LifeScan. I was just wondering throughout the departments, who held the record for the most push-ups?
Do I have to say that on public record?
Please.
Am I obligated to answer this? There's a person that may or may not be sitting to the left of you / right of you, depending on how you're facing. Yeah, our city manager held the record of the most push-ups, yes. And I will begrudgingly say that because that's embarrassing for me, but he did a great job, yes, and participated in that amazing program.
Thank you, Chief Sanchez. With that, I'll
Thank you for that amazing question.
Okay. And as we get ready for the next agenda item, we'll have Bradley Clark presenting for Community Development Department. But as Brad makes his way up here, I'm going to go ahead and call for it now because it looks like it's inevitable. I'm going to need a motion to extend this meeting past 9 p.m. Thank you. Second? And second by Rick. I'd call for a vote on this, yeah? Okay, Indra? Extend meeting past 9.
Yes.
Nancy? Yes. Kathleen?
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes.
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 Okay, thank you, Brad. That means you're still on the hook.
I wasn't sure if that was an indication by, right before I get up to say you want to extend the time of the meeting. I mean, do it. Well, hopefully your brain absorption capacity is doing okay. I'll try to, last one, we're almost there. I'll try to keep it punchy. I do want to recognize two city's community development management team members here tonight. Eric Wade in the green shirt and green tie over there. He is our business operations supervisor. And then Josh, you've already heard from him tonight, our parks superintendent, so appreciate them being here. We have 3 others in the community development department that are part of our leadership team. We have Dana Pierce, economic development manager, Ken Sandlin is our building official, and then the principal planner, Mark Trinidad, took a position with the state recently, and so that position is currently vacant. But before I dive into some of the numbers, I did want to touch on just kind of 2 overarching points. One is related to the strategic plan. I think both the city manager and JC mentioned the strategic plan. There are 89 specific actions in the strategic plan. I hadn't actually counted them, but I counted them yesterday. There's 89. A little over half of those relate to community development. Economic development, housing, workforce issues, vibrant neighborhoods. There's just a lot in there, and we are pretty hyper focused on in this budget and in our actions of community development. The big chunk of those you're going to see reflected in our presentation here tonight. So I just wanted to, I guess, remind about that connection there between the strategic plan and the budget. And then the other thing, as we're going through this, a reminder that about half of what we do in community development is coming, are essentially state, federal driven kind of regulations and mandates. So you'll see a lot of that, kind of behind the scenes there, whether that's the building officials or the building department, which we have a formal agreement with the state of Oregon in terms of the building side, where we quarterly give them payments. We don't have such a formality on the planning side, but there are a lot of those regulations as well. Now, on the parks and economic development side, there's a lot of comprehensive plan and locally driven things. But I wanted to remind that kind of is the overall system in which we're working to kind of have that half and half for us. So moving on. So here is our organizational structure. I pretty much went over who our management team is there. You can see Parks is the primary division in community development in terms of the staffing. They're the largest, both staffing and budget-wise. Community Development Block Grant is a program that we administer. We use a part-time staff that is not a city employee. We do kind of contract out for that. And then the downtown, which is under Josh, we have one FTE there that takes care of the maintenance and facilities for downtown. So that is the basic structure of our staffing, 29 and a half FTEs. So we'll just kind of move through the different divisions now. Parks first, page 169. So this is 88% funded by general fund. State grants, facility rents, and other revenues make up the difference. So in the park maintenance side, 9.8 FTEs. This is a new slide we wanted to throw in this year just to kind of give you a little sense of where the numbers come in at for the fees and the other revenue that are kind of underscoring the parks and the planning. And we're going to have another similar slide to this in the planning. So in parks, as I mentioned, 88% general fund support, the rest 12%. So that comes out to, you look at the last 2 fiscal years, the general fund support for this area was about 86%. And we're on target pretty much to be at the same amount for this fiscal year as well. This represents about 8 or 9 months here. This FY26 number is not a full year. But you can see some folks talk about, well, why don't you just raise fees to cover the parks? And why don't you just raise fees to cover planning? This is the difference that we would have to make up. This is the gap that we would have to make up if you wanted to see a self-sustaining parks or a self-sustaining planning. Basically, the general fund support right now, $2.2 million, so that would be a lot of fees. Gone over this in the past. This is kind of what parks maintenance does. There's a lot that they do. 21 parks and amenities. We're broken down into a series of different sort of tiers and levels of different types of parks. Trails, as we talked about earlier with Dollar Mountain, is another big one that got added in the last couple of years. But there are also other trails that we maintain. Fruitdale, Allen Creek, Greenwood, Hungry Hill, Nebraska are all other trails that get a lot of use by neighborhoods in particular. The urban forestry program we also talked about. That's the position that we have this one increase this year. Not in just to our community development budget, as the city manager mentioned, kind of going half-time out of public works and then making it a full-time community development position. So here's where we end up on the parks maintenance. This is on page 171. You have a FY27 budget of $3.5 million, a change of about 7%, most of that happening in personnel. There's a lot that happens in parks that is not directly staff labor. As evidence on this slide, a lot of contractors, a lot of companies in our community who we rely on to do a lot of this work. Janitorial and garbage services, so we have contracts with companies that provide janitorial services for our parks. The parking lot sweeping, about 10,000. Landscape contractors is also huge. That's over 100,000 in landscape contractors. We use Aspire quite a bit within the park system, both in terms of picking up trash downtown as well as throughout the rest of the park system. And then security services, 92,000. So there's a lot that happens, as you can see here, partnership between the city and local contractors and other service providers. Aquatics, Caveman Pool. So this is 100% general fund. We have very, very low FTE, in large part due to the YMCA partnership, who provides the lifeguards and a lot of the other services, some of the snacks and things like that. They do that. So that allows us to keep this budget pretty low, about 100, just under 120,000, and the contract includes 30,000 in chlorine and chemicals. If you look at that, materials and supplies, so that's well over 85% is really just keeping the balance correct in the water in the swimming pool. So that's a big chunk there. The city takes care of that, as well as all the grounds maintenance, anything else that has to happen with the capital equipment there. That's all things that the city does. So slight uptick there from the last fiscal year, about 18%. And then the last division within parks is recreation. This is also 100% general fund revenue. 13 shelters throughout our program, our system, where all those reservations go through recreation. We've moved in the last few years. We've been at least, I think, maybe 3 years now, all online. So there's a easy software. You just kind of go in, you register, and you can go on and kind of handle a lot of that. But we do have 1.5 FTE handling just recreation. A lot of those large events that you think of in terms of Boatnik and concerts in the park, the Corvette Club Show, the Master Brand Company, they hold their company event there within the park system. So assisting people with all kinds of inquiries, that's the recreation side. Personnel, again, as usual, the largest line item there. And then we're looking at, for recreation, about $222,000. Downtown development. Josh also oversees this person. As I mentioned, there's 1 FTE. This is also not as heavily reliant on general fund, because we do have quite a bit of lodging tax money that goes into downtown. This is our welcome center. This is our all of our public parking lots. The hanging flower baskets, cannot forget those. We have to mention those every year. Our hanging flower baskets, trash collection, so all the trash, we have over 50 trash cans throughout the downtown area. Those are all managed and emptied and maintained by the city. A few highlights to point out to you: public infrastructure, the alley activation and beautification. Downtown Welcome Center, if you've been listening to some of the city council conversations recently, you know there's an ongoing conversation about turning over the actual management and operation of the Downtown Welcome Center from what is now 4 temporary staff that the city hires and oversees to Visit Grants Pass. So that conversation is ongoing. If that contract goes through, we would remove the currently about $45,000 price tag that is to pay for the temporary staff. And we also have another drop there under the personnel. So that's a pretty good chunk of change. The biggest chunk under personnel is that shift that the city manager mentioned earlier, moving the CSO out of the downtown budget and moving it into to Chief Hensman's budget. We have basically been looking at a lot of cost savings here through good work of Josh and trying to get some of those costs down. We have some things like electrical expenses that happened. People drive and they break a light, or there's some other features, amenities downtown that go. So this budget handles a lot of those repairs. Economic development. This one is the least dependent on the general fund, 35%, 31% lodging tax. Urban Renewal Agency helps to fund about 50% of our economic development manager's salary. So we're looking at about 1.7 FTEs for economic development. I won't go through this whole list, but this is essentially what the program is about. It's about the partnerships that get built with all of these organizations that are on the screen behind me. When we talk to developers, when we talk to businesses that are looking either to expand here or that want to come into Grants Pass, one of the key things that you hear them say is the relationships that are already here. People want to come into a place that's strong. They want to come into a place that's healthy and where they can sense that there's strong communications between the different agencies. And I think that is really happening. It's really strong for us. The economic development manager, Dana Pierce, is involved in a lot of these. In terms of the other services that we have, two main ones to point out that come out of economic development. Our relationship with So Ready, which goes back to the very beginning. Grants Pass was one of the very first 5 or 6 organizations that was involved in funding at So Ready at the beginning. We have a $30,000 commitment to them every year. And then the Small Business Development Center of $25,000. So both of those organizations, those funds come out of this fund. Other things that Economic Development staff does, staff liaison to the Tourism Advisory Committee, the Committee on Public Art, and what just recently kicked off the Small Business Task Force. Councilor Nicholas is instrumental in that. So they're going to be, those are the 3 main ones that we give support to. Also are a city representative on Main Street Grants Pass Board, and then we are the event managers right now for Art Along the Road, 4th of July, and the tree lighting. So this division comes in about $276,000. The contractual services increase includes an addition of some COPA restricted funds, about $11,000 there. The biggest difference on that contractual is a $60,000 grant that the city received just last month from the state to do an economic opportunities analysis. So that $60,000 plus another about $12,000 of city money makes up the budget and really the biggest increase under the contractual professional services line. Tourism, very closely related, of course, to the economic development. This is all lodging tax money. We have a contract, of course, with Visit Grants Pass, and that's you'll see on the next slide the big chunk of this. The city's contribution to the Chamber of Commerce is also out of the tourism division of this fund. Travel Southern Oregon, this is mainly just a partnership again. There is no budget implication. The city doesn't contribute any direct cash to Travel Southern Oregon, but there's a lot of cooperation that happens there. And then we do have the tourism grants. We have two cycles each year. $35,000 a year, one spring, one fall, and then the Tourism Advisory Committee. So those are the big ones. Here's a snapshot of the last 5 years in terms of lodging tax statistics. You can look at this last column, the kind of bluish one. That's last year where we have full year of data, 2025. In each of the quarters, we were above 2024's lodging tax revenue. So 2025 was a good year. Not as good as right during COVID, interestingly enough. That was a super strong year for lodging in Grants Pass. But it's still, 2025, you can see, is very competitive and doing well in terms of the lodging tax. So the tourism budget, $1.3 million for FY27 proposed, pretty flat across the board on this one. The 28% of the net lodging tax funds are what go to the DMO, to Visit Grants Pass. CD management and support. This is our internal management component of community development, 3.9 FTE. These are kind of some of the main things they do. This is managed by Eric. There's a lot that happens with these advanced finance districts, with reimbursement districts, with managing liens from title companies in town who see liens on their title reports, and a lot of those are city related. So those kind of come through here. All of the front desk work is managed through this division. So we actually dropped in this division 4%. I don't remember any of my colleagues tonight saying that happened. I don't think there was ever, I don't think there was any red on that difference, so just pointing that out. One fire truck is a lot of parks materials, a lot. Biggest difference here is the internal service charge. So we had over about the last 10 years, the charges that were collected by CD management to help cover the services by Public Works and some of the other divisions had reached a kind of a pretty healthy threshold. And so we basically, to kind of bring that down to within that range that we want to be in for the balance, have reduced some of those costs. So, and then some of this is also, as both chiefs have mentioned tonight, reflecting in the computer and IT side, and shifting that from actually purchasing the computers, purchasing the handheld tablets, to an annual flat amount. So that's reflected here too. The planning division, 87% general fund, 13% fees. I'll just go now to the same chart that I did for parks. You can see here we have total revenues in terms of the fees that are charged for applications for planning, coming in about $205,000 last fiscal year, $220,000 in FY24. Far short of the total requirements. So that, again, that difference is made up by the general fund. Here's some of the work that the planning division does. Again, a lot of statewide mandates and implementing those. The code enforcement, anything related to the development code, we work very closely with the police department and their code enforcement team. Floodplain management is another big one that the planning division does. This big bar on the end of this graph may be a little misleading. We decided this last year to start tracking all of the applications that come in that don't require a separate planning application. So this was a lot of your single-family houses, your duplexes that go through the building department, but that the planning staff have to also review. It does take time, and it is an application, so we decided to add that in there. If you took those new ones out, you're still looking in 2025 at 180. So 180 applications, which was the third highest amount in the last 10 years. So 2026 right now, we're looking at 144 applications just in the first 3 months. So pretty healthy activity when it comes to the planning side. Here's the planning division budget, $874,000 for personnel. We also have some contracts in planning. The biggest one there for this next year, we're looking at updating the comprehensive plan as well as the development code. So those are going to require some external third-party contracts to help do that work. Again, consulting contracts, anytime you see a subdivision come through, we often have to do some kind of transportation analysis on that. So we do rely on a transportation engineer that's outside the city to do those reviews for us. And then there's a number of other contracts you can see there on the screen. And then finally, we have the building division. This is a separate completely separate from the general fund. The building division is 100% funded through, self-funded through fees and permits. Inspections, a lot of enforcement-related activity. Here is the data, as the city manager mentioned early on, the single-family permit sector is still very low for a number of reasons. Mortgage interest rates, material costs are still pretty high. So those seem to be keeping that suppressed. So we're looking at 46 for all of 2025. We have 15 so far for the first 3 months of 2025. The largest commercial projects that we see going on right now, Nebraska Trail Apartments comes in about 10.7 million valuation. The Allen Creek Crossing Apartments on Allen Creek and Nebraska, or on what's that on? West Harbeck, thank you. That's about $10.6 million value, and then a number of others. So we've kind of offset some of the work that a lot of our inspectors were doing for single family. It's kind of shifted a little bit to the multifamily side the last couple of years. We come in here at the building division just under 3 million, but you can see the biggest chunk of that is a carryover. This unappropriated ending balance of 1.4 makes up the biggest chunk of that. We do have one building inspector has plumbing certifications that no longer need to contract out for a majority of inspections, so we had some savings on that. So this is a look at the overall community development department. Again, the biggest change being the shift in personnel of the CSO out of there to police, and then CD management and the planning division also having some salary savings. There's a couple of other funds that fall under community development. Just want to hit really quickly. One is the Industrial and Downtown Loan Fund. This was the the genesis of this started with an old community development block grant, unrelated from the program that we currently have. This goes back several years, that had basically provided the core of the revenue for that we've held on to. And this is, at this point, and again, this is completely at the council's discretion, but at this point, we have set aside the $500,000 to allow for that interest to grow. Right now, we're under the $500,000, and as that gets up to around that $550,000 range, when we would open that up. We have mentioned a couple of times tonight the facade grants and some of the other economic development grants that would be funded out of this. These are not within the urban renewal area. So that was the benefit of having this fund. We can apply this money anywhere we want. The thinking there was that the Urban Renewal Agency provides a good source of funding for the area that's in the URA boundary. So this would be places like the Rogue River Highway, kind of going out of town. None of that is in the urban renewal area. So these funds, these grants would be available for that. So once we hit up to that point where we're ready to kind of advertise grants, we'll kind of look and maybe do some mailings and kind of target those advertisements so people know that these funds are available. And then we do have our community development block grant. This is an annual program between $350,000 and $400,000 that we receive from HUD. This year, we're looking at about $346. The drop there is really just 100% out of our control. That's an allocation that comes through the Housing and Urban Development Department. And I think that takes us to the end of community development.
Great, thank you, Bradley. Do we have any questions? I'm going to start with Kathleen.
So I was curious, Brad, hearing that the SBDC is making some changes, how does that change in how we support them?
Yes, thank you. I didn't mention that on that 25,000. So yes, as you heard at the forum, at the workshop a while ago, the RCC is no longer able to support the SBDC program locally. They've been doing to the tune of $200,000 and $250,000 a year in supporting Small Business Development Center. So with RCC not being able to do that, I believe it's the Lane Community College, and Terry would maybe be able to know, is basically has the state contract for managing all SBDCs throughout the state of Oregon. We recently met with the Lane Community College person, and they have committed to one advisor for Josephine County. Or actually, it might be for Southern Oregon, for Josephine and Jackson.
One each.
I think, is it one each? Yeah,
Correct.
one each. So one advisor each. So they're still working that out. So as of the end of June, the RCC program with our, 5 to 7 advisors drops to just the one. So we understand that the Lane Community College is able to fund that one right now. But I think a lot of that depends on them kind of gearing up down here and seeing how it goes and seeing what, who the person is and some of the other demands that they might have on the program. So we have set aside that $25,000 still just to kind of see kind of where that program goes and the new partnership with Lane Community College and the advisor. There may be some other opportunities to use that $25,000 in terms of small business support if it's not the actual SBDC program. As you know, we have the Small Business Task Force that just started meeting, and as they generate ideas, as they come up with things, there may be some other opportunities there. So that's what we have that set aside for.
Well, we also have the Incubator Nexus.
Yes.
Would that be a place that we could possibly divert the funds?
It could, because it is, there's a lot of flexibility with that $25,000. Yeah.
Great, thank you. Other questions? Tom?
One of the ways to achieve long-term efficiency and lower cost is to invest in equipment and systems that are more efficient and less costly. And your department recently received a grant that I was looking for information here from the Energy Trust of Oregon for LED bulbs. No?
We didn't get it, but we're planning to apply for a grant that would for the ball fields.
Okay.
Yeah.
That substantial amount. And the savings were also indicated to be quite high.
Yes, right. No, if you take that over, extrapolate that over like a 5 to 10 year period in terms of the cost, it can really add up. But yeah, so we'll hopefully Josh's grant writing skills are top notch, and we'll be able to land that grant.
I'm going to go over to Kurt.
Thank you for the presentation. I see in here that the city was awarded a $60,000 technical assistant grant to a consultant to develop an economic opportunities analysis. Mm-hmm. Where are we in that process?
Yeah, we did put out an RFP to solicit proposals. We received, I think, 3 or 4. The review committee met just a couple weeks ago to kind of go over those. So we do have a low bidder on that, so we'll be able to hopefully get that contract before council here just a few weeks. So then we would meet with them and sort of get a more formal scope of work lined out. But we expect that will start gearing up here within the next month or two.
Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.
Other questions from the committee? Okay, seeing none, I have one, Brad. Thank you for the presentation. My question is in Parks Maintenance, page 171. It looks like we're projecting about $250,000 increase. I understand that some of that is that urban forester to trail supervisor, but I didn't see any increase in FTEs. And if I'm doing my math right, we take the first $50,000 off, we still have a $200,000 increase. It's mostly in labor. Am I doing that right? And that means that the average FTE is getting a $20,000 per year raise in parks maintenance?
Well, if they were here, I'm sure they would say thank you.
Bad math by me or misunderstanding?
Yeah, let me just get back up to that if I can. So this was the park maintenance, correct?
Yeah, and I'm sorry, I didn't follow it on the slides. In the booklet, it's on page 171.
Yeah, I think it's, so, sorry, I know there's a faster way to do this. So park maintenance, is this the personnel change here you're talking about? 103,000?
I've got the total budget going from $3,293,000 to $3,537,000 for a net increase of 244 or 7.4%. I caught on that the urban forester to trail supervisor was part of it.
Right.
But can't catch the rest.
Yeah, so the contractual services is a part of that. The jump here in professional services are we're looking at an increase from a couple of our providers, and Josh can maybe speak to this. Spire is one.
So essentially, part of that difference, I'm assuming finance worked in some potential for the new labor negotiations that are occurring with the union. Additionally, a large part of that would be the urban forestry and trails coordinator position, pulling that half FTE over from public works, but also needing to fund it as well. And then the main increase is going to be through our contractual services. With one of our providers, we had a pretty substantial increase due to the way the state contract works with them. They're able to bill us for more than what they previously were. And so that caused a pretty significant increase for one of our providers. And then the other side's our security. That also experienced a pretty big increase over the last year.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions? Okay, thank you,
Thank you.
Bradley. All right, next up, we're going to look for a ratification of the budget hearing schedule. At our orientation, we received that schedule. In the front of your packet, you have the agendas. So unless there are any questions on scheduling, I would look for a motion to ratify the rest of the budget hearing schedule.
So moved.
Thank you, Indra. Do I have a second? Second by Eric. If we can, we'll start with Nick. Go down the roll for a vote.
Yes.
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 Yes. Yes.
Yes.
Yes. Yes.
Excellent. Passes unanimously. Next up, we have an opportunity to hear members of the public comment. Do we have anybody from the public who would like to offer comment on budget hearing tonight? All right. Seeing none, we will continue to move on. Do we have any general question or information requests from the committee as we move forward and wrap up tonight? Okay. Excellent.
I got one.
Thank you. Nick.
I'm just, this is more just a general, I don't even know if we could like track this necessarily, but do we have a cost estimate on like state mandates and how much that's costing the city out of pocket? I know that's hard to track. I'm just curious. Yeah, that's kind of what I figured.
Sorry, I'll speak into the microphone so people hear. So no, not necessarily, but we definitely can feel it in every department. It's heavy, but we don't necessarily track it per dollar.
Thank you.
Okay, any other general questions? I'm going to go Victoria.
As a follow-up to that, would there be a way to implement that even in a small way? Again, then maybe adding on to that going into the future?
We can look at doing what we can. Sometimes it's like the other directors are talking about. doing something new that the state mandates, which means it crosses out another project that they had slated to do. So you're trading $1 for another that are within the allocated budget amounts. So that's where it makes it a little bit difficult as to not necessarily knowing exactly what the mandated changes are, because we roll with the punches. But we'll try.
Christina?
Yes, thank you. Would it be possible to get, for the entire committee, a copy of the slides emailed to us prior to the 30th meeting on the trends and challenges, Aaron, that you went over?
Acoustics are not very good.
Yes.
Thank you very much.
Okay, any other general questions or comments? Okay, next up, as we move on to the agenda, we are going to vote tonight for tentative approval of the budget items we've discussed this evening. Before we go into that vote, I do myself want to disclose a potential conflict of interest. We heard tonight that a portion of lodging tax dollars goes to support the North Visitor Information Center that houses the Chamber of Commerce. I'm obviously the president and CEO of the Chamber of Commerce, so would just like to disclose a potential conflict of interest there. Unless we have any other discussion at this time, I would ask for a motion for a tentative approval of the budget items discussed this evening.
So moved.
Thank you, Eric. Do I have a second? Christina? I'm going to start, if we can do, any discussion before we move forward? Okay, I will move down the line with the vote, starting with Indra.
Yes.
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 Yes?
Yes.
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 Excellent. Passes unanimously. Before we adjourn, Aaron, do you want to ask about the tour that you sent the email?
Yeah, I think some of you got notices about the tour that we've got. Just curious who is planning to attend so we know what size transportation and that kind of thing. If you could just raise your hand, Karen will put you down on the list on people who will be attending the tour. The tour is at, Jason, you want to talk about the tour?
Yeah. We'll be leaving here promptly at 5. The bus will be here at 4:45. We'll provide a sandwich. We'll be viewing several transportation projects, including sewer project on Conklin, Hillcrest Highland Avenue reconstruction, several other road projects, water filtration plant, the new water filtration plant. We'll be stopping there, getting out, taking a look, and then coming back through the Al parking lot work. So quite a jaunt for the hour. So we'd love to see all of you there. Here at 4:45. Sandwich will be provided.
So again, just raise your hand and have them up just for a moment so Karen can get a count.
Sure.
Looks like a lot of people. That's great. It must have been the sandwich, Jason. Because there was only 3 or 4 hands when I was talking about it. So.
Regarding that tour, is there, for future, is there a possibility that maybe that we can tour the animal shelter since it's going to be a topic of discussion? Or is that asking too much? Because I know we're limited on time.
Yeah, that's a county asset. I mean, yeah.
Yeah, that's what I figured. Thank you.
Okay, so if I do this correctly, we are not adjourning because we will continue our Budget Committee hearing to Thursday, April 26th, 2026 here in Council Chambers. Thank you all. Good.